What would you do if you found out your wife was sleeping with your best friend? No. Seriously. What would you do? Would you yell? Break something? Go into a blind rage? Would you spiral, cry into your pillow, call your mom, call his mom, or blow up your whole world in a single devastating explosion? Yeah. That's what I expected too. But I didn't do any of that. When I found out my wife had been sleeping with my best friend, I didn't scream. I didn't confront them with fists or tears. I didn't even raise my voice. I said one word. Congrats. And that right there was the beginning of something they never expected. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Because when they moved into their shiny new apartment, thinking they'd finally escaped the drama, they had no idea whose name was on the lease. They didn't know who collected the rent. They didn't know the man behind the walls. But I did. And I was just getting started. Let me take you back. My name is Mark Weston.
I'm 32.
Clean cut, buttoned up, always polite. The kind of guy that gets called Mr. Reliable by every HR manager and every mother-in-law. For a living, I invest in property. Not flashy high-rise stuff, but solid buildings, mostly downtown, mostly quiet. If you looked at my life from the outside, it would have seemed perfect. Married to a stunning woman, Emily. Together 8 years, married for 4. I owned 3 residential buildings in the city, managed dozens of tenants, and had a best friend since childhood, Jason, the kind of guy who could make a funeral feel like a birthday party. Everyone loved Jason. He was charismatic, athletic, charming in that slightly arrogant way women fall for before realizing he's the wrong kind of confident. Emily loved him too, just a little more than I ever realized. Now, here's the thing no one tells you. Betrayal doesn't feel like a gunshot. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it feels more like standing still while the world quietly moves around you, and you can't figure out why you feel colder than usual. There were signs, of course. Hindsight is perfect that way. The way Emily used to light up when Jason walked in, that sparkle in her eyes that dimmed around me. The way she laughed at his jokes with her whole chest, like she forgot I was even in the room. And the way she slowly stopped touching me. Not all at once. Bit by bit, like turning off a light in stages. First the kisses stopped. Then the casual hand on the shoulder. Then the goodnight hug. One night, I caught them exchanging a look across the dinner table. It lasted less than a second, but it burned into my skull like a brand. That look didn't belong in a friendship. It was the kind of look you give someone when you've already seen them naked and can't stop replaying it in your head. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, I started watching. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had the sinking suspicion that you're being lied to, but no one around you will admit it? That sensation, the tightness in your chest, the paranoia humming like static in your brain. It eats you alive. So I started documenting everything. I wasn't paranoid. I was methodical. When Emily said she was working late, I checked her calendar. She wasn't. When Jason said he was out of town, I tracked his location on a shared fitness app we both forgot we'd synced 3 years ago. He was in town. I watched the pattern. Excuses that overlapped. Gaps that matched. But I still hadn't caught them. Not yet. Not until Emily's birthday. She told me she wanted a girls' weekend with her college friends. Spa retreat, wine nights, nothing I'd enjoy. You don't have to come, she said, kissing me on the cheek. I just want a few days to unplug. It sounded innocent enough, almost sweet, so I smiled. I even helped pack her bag. And the second she left the house, I called one of her friends. Her voice over the phone was shaky. Emily? She's not with me. We haven't seen her since last year. Checkmate. Now here's where it gets good. You'd think I'd call her, or show up, or set the world on fire. No. Instead, I booked a dinner with Jason. Just him and me. Steakhouse. His favorite place. Expensive wine. Like nothing was wrong. He showed up smiling. Slapped me on the back. Full of jokes. How's Emily? I asked halfway through the meal. She's good, he said. She told you about the trip? Yeah, I said, swirling my glass. Yeah, she did. We clinked glasses. And in that moment I knew. He didn't just lie to my face. He felt safe lying to my face. That was his mistake. Now I could have gone nuclear. I could have ruined everything right then and there. But see, that's not who I am. Instead, I played dumb. I told Emily I hoped she had a great trip. She sent me pictures from a hotel lobby she wasn't staying in. A fake room. I could tell. The stock art on the walls was one I'd personally installed in one of my own properties last year. That's when it all clicked. Jason was living in one of my buildings. Building 17, the Riverside Complex. The one with the rent-to-own option that I'd never publicly listed under my name. It was handled through a Shell LLC Weston Urban Holdings, which meant Emily had spent her birthday in one of my apartments. Owned by me, cleaned by my staff, secured by my cameras. I watched her on playback that night, walking in with Jason, arms around his neck, giggling like a teenager. The man I'd grown up with, the woman I'd promised forever, in my building, under my roof. And all I did was smile. But why? Why not rage? Why not ruin? Because sometimes revenge is better served at 72 degrees with central air and a fixed-term lease. Because they didn't know that the apartment they were about to move into together, their fresh start, their little love nest, would belong to me. They didn't know I had access to every hallway, every mailbox, every maintenance request, every rent payment. They didn't know I'd be the one reviewing their credit scores. They didn't know that as soon as they signed that lease, they were stepping into my world. And I don't throw tantrums in my world. I write scripts, I play roles, and I build endings. You ever feel like you're in a movie? Not just any movie, their movie. Like you're the boring husband in the background while they play star-crossed lovers. Yeah. That's what they thought this was. They thought I'd be a footnote in their story. But they forgot one thing. I own the set. They moved in together 3 weeks later. Announced it proudly on social media. Emily posted, "New chapter, new place, new beginning." Jason commented, "Wouldn't want to do life with anyone else." And me? I liked the post. Then I waited. Because when rent was due, and the pipes broke, and the thermostat glitched, they'd have to call the property manager. And guess who signs the checks for that manager? Guess who signs the eviction notices? Guess who owns the locks? This isn't just a story about cheating. It's a story about staying silent long enough to become the loudest voice in the room. It's about watching people dig their own graves while you sell them the shovel. It's about being underestimated, and using that underestimation as a weapon sharper than any blade. They thought I was weak, but what they didn't realize was that my calm wasn't surrender. It was control. And what happened once they moved in? Well, let's just say rent wasn't the only thing that came due. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever watched someone fall in love with someone else? Not on TV. Not in a movie. I mean real life. Right in front of you, while they're still holding your hand. It's subtle. It's surgical. It's quiet, but lethal. And when it's your own wife, it's the kind of pain that doesn't make a sound. It just sinks into your bones and stays there. That's what I saw. That's what I felt. The first time Emily looked at Jason the way she used to look at me. Let's rewind a bit. Before the lies. Before the birthday trip. Before the congratulatory smile and the apartment twist. Back to when everything still looked normal. We were 3 peas in a pod. The classic triangle. Me, the stable one. Emily, the beautiful free spirit. And Jason was the spark. He was the kind of guy that didn't walk into a room. He announced himself. He flirted with waitresses, high-fived bartenders, hugged strangers. Everyone called him life of the party. And I was the one who paid for it. We met in college, all of us. Jason and I were roommates in our dorm. Total opposites which somehow worked. He was the shot of whiskey. I was the glass of water. Emily met us through a mutual friend. She said she liked how safe I felt. That should have been a red flag, shouldn't it? She loved how safe I felt. I thought it was a compliment. Turns out it was foreshadowing. Now I want you to picture this. We're at dinner. A little Italian place we used to hit every other Friday. 1 bottle of wine in. Candle flickering. I'm telling a story about a tenant who installed a jacuzzi on the third floor of a rental unit without telling anyone. Ridiculous stuff. I'm in the middle of the punchline, and Emily isn't even listening. She's looking across the table at Jason. Eyes glossy, chin tilted, that soft half-smile. You ever seen a woman watch a man speak? Not just listen, watch, like his words are music. Like he's the only person in the room who exists. That used to be me. And just like that, it wasn't. The moment was only a second. Jason didn't notice. Or maybe he did and played dumb. Emily blinked and turned back to me, laughed at the right time, sipped her wine. But I felt it. I felt the temperature drop. And the next few days, everything changed. She stopped texting first. She stopped asking how my day was. She wasn't cruel. That's the worst part. There was no big fight. She was just absent. Like she was slowly fading from our marriage pixel by pixel. Now here's the question. When do you really know someone's checked out of a relationship? Is it when the sex stops? When the I love yous get shorter? Or is it when you tell them a big win at work and they barely blink? Because I closed a 6-figure deal that week. Bought an entire duplex property outright. Major milestone. We talked about this for months. I told Emily that night at dinner. She looked up from her phone. Oh, that's good, babe. And went back to scrolling. Not even a smile. Not even fake excitement. And the moment that sealed it? She was texting Jason. They had a thread. I didn't know how long it had been going on. Not yet. But I recognized the pattern. The way her eyes lit up when she typed. The way she tilted her screen just slightly away from me. At that point, I didn't even care what the messages said. I already knew what was between them. Let's go back one more time, just a few months before it all exploded. We were hosting a party. Our house. Backyard lights, finger foods, Bluetooth speakers humming chill beats. Jason shows up last, per usual. Leather jacket. 6-pack of IPAs. He makes a scene at the door like he's just returned from war. And everyone loves it. Emily laughs too hard at his jokes. At one point, I catch them talking on the patio. Her hand brushes his chest for just a second. Just enough to not be nothing. And the thing is, Emily's not stupid. She knows I see them. But she doesn't stop. That was the first time I asked myself, are they in love? Not are they cheating? Not did they kiss? Just, are they in love? Because if they are, then I'm just the third wheel in my own marriage. But here's the twist. Even as I started noticing these signs, I didn't confront her. Not because I was scared. Not because I wanted to pretend. Because I needed to understand. I needed to watch. I needed to know if this was lust, or if they had already made me the ghost at my own dinner table. And they did. Every little gesture, every shared smile, every inside joke I wasn't part of. It all added up. Jason started coming over more often when I wasn't home. How do I know? Because my Ring camera saw him. He'd pull into the driveway, walk inside, stay for hours.
No groceries. No packages.
Just him. And her. And when I walked in later, she'd act like nothing happened. Hey babe, how was work? You ever been gaslit with affection? It's wild. Because suddenly she starts overcorrecting. Brings home takeout. Suggests movie nights. But there's something off in the way she touches me. It's mechanical. Like she's doing what she's supposed to do. Not because she wants to. Like she's keeping me warm just long enough until she finds the courage to leave. And here's where the contradiction hit me hardest. I should have hated her. I should have hated him. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I felt like the walls were closing in. Like the life I built was becoming a set piece in a story that didn't star me anymore. And still, I said nothing. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. I started keeping notes. Times, dates, odd behaviors. Phone calls that dropped when I walked into the room. Shirts that smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. I wasn't collecting evidence to confront them. I was collecting puzzle pieces. Because if they were going to betray me, they were going to do it all the way. I wanted to watch them push the knife in. Because once they did, I'd already be holding the handle. Let me ask you something. Have you ever let someone cheat on you? Not because you're spineless. Not because you didn't care. But because you wanted to see how far they'd go? That was me. I was standing at the edge of the cliff, pretending not to notice the shove coming. I wanted to see if they'd jump. And they did. But not yet. This was just the build-up. The awkward silences. The disappearing affections. The glances across rooms. The moment she started pulling away, truly pulling away, was the night Jason stayed over accidentally. We'd had drinks. A little too much. Jason slurred something about not wanting to drive home. Emily insisted he stay on the couch. I went to bed alone. She lingered downstairs. When I woke up at 3 a.m., she wasn't next to me. Jason wasn't on the couch. And the guest room door was shut. I stood outside the door for 10 full seconds. Not breathing. Not thinking. Just knowing. I didn't open it. I didn't have to, because some silences are louder than screams. But what happened the next morning? What did Emily say? What did Jason do? And how did I play it cool when everything in me wanted to tear the house down? That's when things truly started to unravel. And that's where the next part begins. When I walked into the kitchen that morning, the coffee was already brewing. Emily was at the stove, scrambling eggs like it was any other day. Jason sat at the counter, hair messy, hoodie on, acting like this was his home. No one looked guilty. No one looked nervous. That's what made it worse. You ever see two people pretending a little too hard that nothing happened? That's how they looked, like actors over-rehearsing the lie. "Morning," Jason said, voice casual. "Sleep okay?" I asked. "Yeah, couch is comfy." Emily chimed in too quickly. I made up the guest room in case the couch was too firm. There it was. The story. The cover. I nodded, poured my coffee, and didn't say a word, because I wanted to see how far they'd go. Emily tried to talk to me more that morning than she had in weeks. "How's work going? What's the plan for today? Want to go see that new movie this weekend?" It was like she was trying to patch a sinking boat with tape. But I just kept my face neutral, answering calmly, politely, like nothing was off. And that's when I realized something brutal. They weren't afraid of me finding out. They were betting I'd never do anything about it. So I let it play out. For the next 2 weeks, Jason came over more and more. Always with a reason. Helping Mark fix the garage. Borrowing tools. Dropping off beers. It was pathetic. The slow-motion unraveling of people who think they're clever. And all the while, Emily stopped being mine. Not officially, but emotionally, mentally, she was already gone. She'd sit next to me on the couch and lean toward him when she laughed. She'd mention his opinion on things more than mine. She even started dressing differently. Less sleepwear, more lingerie, just to feel good, she said. But it wasn't for me. And the worst part? Jason had the audacity to talk to me like nothing had changed. "Bro, you and Emily are solid. Seriously, relationship goals." He said that. He said that to my face. And I smiled. Because at that point, I had a plan. Let me tell you something about betrayal. It hurts most when it's slow. When it's 1,000 paper cuts instead of one clean slice. I used to think the worst pain was catching someone in the act. I was wrong. The worst pain is watching the person you love slowly turn into a stranger. Right in front of you, and knowing they don't even feel bad about it. That's what made my silence so dangerous. Because while they thought I was oblivious, I was preparing. I started reviewing the leases on all my buildings. Jason didn't know it, but I already owned the property he was eyeing downtown. The one Emily said she'd always loved. A cozy 2-bedroom with a balcony, exposed brick, and just enough charm to feel like a fresh start. Jason had been looking at units in that building. Emily even mentioned it once. "I wish we lived somewhere like that," she'd said, staring at her phone. She wasn't talking to me. You ever hear your partner plan a future and realize you're not in it? It's a special kind of heartbreak. And all I could do was smile, because I was about to become part of their future in a way they'd never see coming. 3 days later, Emily left for that girls' weekend. We already covered that part. The lies, the fake hotel check-in, The Instagram posts that didn't match the GPS metadata. All of it sloppy. But I let it happen, because it confirmed everything I needed to know. She wasn't conflicted. She wasn't confused. She had chosen Jason over me. And now I could stop pretending. The night she got back, she walked through the door like nothing happened, dropped her bag, kissed my cheek, smiled wide. Miss me? I looked at her for a long second, then said, congrats. She blinked. What? You've been seeing Jason, I said, calm as ever. I know. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. It's not like that, she said. Sure, I replied. So you just slept in the same room, touched his chest, whispered to him after midnight, lied about your trip. That's not like that. Got it. Tears welled in her eyes. That part was real, I think. But I didn't care. You know what the saddest part is? I said. I watched it happen. I saw it in the way you looked at him. That's what broke her. Not the accusation. Not the evidence. But that line. I saw it in the way you looked at him. 'Cause deep down, she knew I was right. That look didn't belong to me anymore. Jason showed up 10 minutes later. He didn't expect me to be calm. His body was tense, fists half-clenched like he thought I was going to hit him. But I didn't. I just poured a drink, handed it to him, and said, I hope she was worth it. He didn't say a word. Emily stood in the corner, crying. Not for me. For herself. Because she realized what she gave up. Then I said, if you two want to be together, fine. I won't stop you. I won't fight. In fact, I smiled. I'll help you find a place. That caught them off guard. Mark, we didn't mean... Emily started. I raised a hand. Don't. It's done. Jason looked confused. You're not gonna, freak out? No, I said, sipping my drink. I don't need to. Then I walked upstairs, packed a bag, booked a hotel, and left them in the house I paid for. The next day, they made it official. Facebook status updated. Couple photos posted. Selfies with brunch mimosas and ironic captions like, unexpected but perfect. And me? I stayed quiet, because they thought they'd won. They thought I was out of the story. But what they didn't realize was that the story was just getting good. Because a week later, Jason signed a lease. He thought it was random. Just a good deal. Right price. Great location. He told Emily, we got lucky. They didn't know who owned the building. They didn't know I'd reduced the application barriers to push them through faster. They didn't know the leaseholder name, Urban Elm Properties, was just one of 3 shells under my control. They didn't know the cameras in the lobby had a direct feed to my private server. They didn't know I would be approving their rent payments. They moved in on a Friday. She posted another photo. New place. New beginning dizzy. I double-tapped it. Then I opened my email and approved their first rent invoice. And smiled. Because the apartment was mine. The walls? Mine. The air they breathed? Rented. From me. And what came next? Let's just say, I wasn't the only one watching anymore. You ever notice how the biggest lies hide behind the simplest words? Just a weekend with the girls. Don't worry. It's nothing. I'd never hurt you. But they still do, don't they? Sometimes it's not what they say, it's how easily they say it. That's what gets you. The ease. That's what made me suspicious when Emily skipped my birthday. Let me paint the scene. It was a Tuesday, not exactly party central, I get it. But I'd cleared the evening. Restaurant reservation. A little spot on the waterfront. The same place I took her after we got engaged. And she forgot. Not like, oops, I thought it was tomorrow. No, this was deliberate. Because 3 days before my birthday, she sat me down, all soft tone and apologetic eyes, and said, Babe, I feel awful. But the girls already planned a spa weekend. It's been on the calendar for weeks. She didn't offer to cancel. Didn't ask if we could reschedule dinner. Just told me, like a heads up. And I nodded. Because this wasn't about a birthday dinner. This was about something else. Let me ask you something. If your partner bails on your birthday for a spa weekend, but can't name which friend she's going with until you press her 3 times. Do you still believe her? Because I didn't. Not for a second. I let her leave, though. Watched her pack the overnight bag. Watched her double-check her phone every time a text came in. And I played dumb. You sure you don't want me to drop you off at the airport? She smiled. No need.
I'm Ubering.
How convenient. I kissed her goodbye at the door. She kissed me back. Barely. Half a second.
No smile.
Then she was gone. I stood at the window and watched her Uber drive away. And you know what I did next? I didn't call her friends. I called Jason. Bro, I said, you up for drinks tonight?
Birthday Tradition.
There was a pause.
Dam, Mann.
I forgot it was your birthday. I'm actually not in town this weekend. Visiting family. He sounded nervous, like someone reading off a script. I didn't call him out, didn't accuse, didn't ask a single question. Just said, no worries, next time, and hung up. Now I had 2 stories. Emily, girls' weekend. Jason, family visit. And yet, something didn't add up. So I opened my laptop, pulled up my rental property security feeds, and waited. Here's something you should know. Jason had been apartment hunting. But in the meantime, he'd been using my spare unit. One I usually reserved for short-term corporate rentals. He didn't know I'd reactivated the hallway cams after a tenant vandalized the stairwell 2 months ago. I never removed them, didn't advertise them either. But they were there. And at 9:37 p.m. that night, the night of my birthday, I saw Emily. Black dress, heels, hair down, laughing, walking into that building. And behind her, Jason, arm around her waist. Let me repeat that. While I sat alone on my birthday, eating cold takeout from a plastic container, my wife was celebrating with my best friend. In my building, on my cameras. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't even blink. I just rewound the footage and watched it again. Like a director watching the first cut of a film he already knew the ending to. She stayed the night. They left together the next morning. She texted me at noon. Spa weekend is amazing. How's your day going? I stared at the message for a full minute, then replied, miss you. Hope you're having fun. I wonder if she knew, even then, that the leash was already slipping from her hands. But I didn't stop there, because I needed to know how deep the lie went. So I checked her location history. Yes, she'd shared it once. Just in case of emergencies, she said. She forgot she never turned it off. The spa she told me about never happened. The hotel didn't exist. She'd been at his place for 2 nights. Want to hear the punchline? 3 days after she got back, Emily handed me a gift bag. Happy late birthday, she said. Inside,
Atier.
plain, gray, cheap material. The kind of thing you grab last minute at a department store. She leaned in, kissed me on the cheek, and said, I'm sorry I missed it. I looked her dead in the eye and smiled. It's okay. You were with the girls, right? She nodded. Yeah. And I just nodded back.
No emotion. No accusation.
Because the real gift was knowing exactly who she was now and what she was about to walk into. You ever stand in the middle of your own life and realize you've been cast in the wrong role? Like you're playing the faithful husband in someone else's rom-com. Only the audience already knows how it ends? That's how I felt. But here's the difference. Most people would rage, cry, burn the house down. Me? I rewrote the script, quietly, because while Emily and Jason were busy writing their love story in the shadows, I was already building the sequel, and I was going to make damn sure I got final cut. But what happened when they officially moved in together? What did they find waiting for them in their new apartment? And how did a simple rent payment reveal everything they didn't know about me? What came next wasn't revenge. It was a lesson, and neither of them was ready to learn it. You'd think that after finding out your wife spent your birthday in bed with your best friend, the worst was behind you. But no, that was just the setup. Because betrayal doesn't just hurt in the moment. It echoes. It stains everything that came before. Every memory, every joke, every I love you. And as I stood there with a cheap gray tie in my hands, trying not to laugh in her face, I realized something. Emily didn't feel guilty. She felt invincible. Guilt looks like hesitation. It looks like careful words, nervous glances, a touch that lingers too long to say sorry without saying it out loud. But she didn't have any of that. She gave me that tie like she was doing me a favor, like I should be grateful she even remembered. And that's when the second lie started. Because Emily wasn't just cheating anymore. She was rewriting history. The following weekend, Jason showed up again. He walked in like nothing had changed, like I wasn't supposed to know, slapped my back, opened my fridge without asking, grabbed a beer. He had the nerve to toast me. To another year around the sun, he said. Emily smiled, eyes flicking between us like she was watching a live show she'd written herself. I clinked his bottle, took a long sip, and thought about all the ways I could end this right here, right now. But I didn't, because I wasn't done watching. You ever let your enemies get comfortable? It's the best strategy in the world. Give them time. Give them space. Let them get sloppy. Because guilt makes people cautious. But entitlement makes them dumb. Later that night, I accidentally left my phone in the living room. Came back 5 minutes later. Caught Jason alone, scrolling. My phone was right where I left it, but the screen was on. The Messages app open. He looked up, froze.
Sorry, Mann.
Thought it was mine. I smiled. No problem. And I let him believe I believed him. That was the moment I knew. He was scared. Not scared of me, scared of being exposed. Because he wasn't a villain. Not really. He was a coward. The kind that flirts with fire and pretends to be surprised when it burns him. And Emily? She was still trying to balance it all. Still playing both sides. She'd whisper, "I love you," at night. Even though she barely looked me in the eyes anymore. She'd cook dinner, then text him under the table. It was pathetic. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was amused. Because I knew something they didn't. Something that made the betrayal almost entertaining. They were planning to move in together. Emily hadn't told me yet, but I'd seen the browser tabs on her laptop. Apartments.com. Zillow. Best neighborhoods for couples. She wanted out, but she wanted to leave clean. To be the victim. The woman who tried, who gave it everything, but just fell out of love. And Jason, he was looking at places that were conveniently cheap, trendy, and downtown. What he didn't realize was that every building he looked at, every single one on his shortlist, belonged to me. Or more specifically, to my holding companies. Urban Elm, Weston District Holdings, Parkview Estates LLC. Different names. Same owner. Me. So I nudged things along. I had my assistant reduce the application screening threshold on one of the Riverside units. 2-bedroom, 3rd floor, corner unit. The one with the nice balcony and exposed brick. They applied. Approved instantly. Emily texted me that night. "Hey, I think I'm going to move out. I've been unhappy for a while. Please don't make this harder than it has to be."
No apology. No honesty.
Just a statement. I replied, "I understand. I hope it works out for you." She didn't know that I already had access to her lease agreement. Didn't know I'd signed off on it that morning. Didn't know the security deposit she wired went straight into my accounts. She moved out 2 weeks later. Didn't cry. Didn't look back. Jason helped carry the boxes. They kissed in the driveway, and I watched them through the blinds. Then, after they drove off, I popped open a bottle of champagne and toasted to their new beginning, because they had no idea what they were walking into. Here's the part no one expects. I wasn't interested in revenge. Not yet. I was interested in education. I wanted them to learn what it feels like when the world doesn't bend for you. When the cracks start forming in the dream they stole. Because while they were posting cute selfies and captioning them, #NewChapter, I was preparing the chapters they would read next. They settled in fast. I got access to the maintenance tickets. Saw their Wi-Fi installation request. Saw Jason complain about the water pressure. I responded as management and told him it was within code. He said, okay. He had no idea he was emailing me. A week later, they were late on rent. Just by a few days. But still. Jason made the payment. Said it was a bank issue. Typical. Emily followed up with a passive-aggressive email. Just want to make sure everything's processed. We don't want problems. I forwarded it to myself, laughed, and added a note to their tenant file. Watch closely, but back to the birthday, because this chapter started with a lie, a spa weekend that never happened. And it would only be fair to let it end with a truth. So I printed the security footage. Just a few stills. Her walking into Jason's apartment. The timestamp, the birthday date. I didn't send them to her. Didn't blackmail her. Didn't even mention them. I slid them into a small envelope. No note. No return address. Just dropped it in their mailbox. Let them sit with it. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's a quiet whisper in the back of someone's mind that says, "We see you." But what happened when their dream apartment started to crumble? When late rent turned into stress? When Jason's secrets unraveled? And Emily's comfort began to rot? That's where things started to shift. Because they thought they were moving forward. But in reality, they were just sinking deeper. And I was the one holding the rope. What's worse than knowing your partner cheated? Knowing they laughed about it behind your back. Not just cheated. Mocked you. Gloated. Compared. Shared screenshots of your texts like you were a joke between them. Let me ask you this. Have you ever scrolled through private messages not meant for your eyes? And realized you weren't the villain of the story? You were the punchline. It was a Tuesday. Late. Their second month in the apartment. Rent had been paid barely, but complaints were rolling in. Water heater. Noisy neighbors. A mysterious odor in the stairwell. That odor? Yeah. I knew what it was. There was an old restaurant grease trap venting into the stairwell. Took me 10 minutes to fix. I waited 3 days. But that's not what matters. What matters is what happened that night. Emily forgot to log out of her iCloud on the old iPad. It was mine, technically. I gave it to her last year. She said she wanted to use it for reading. I hadn't touched it in months. It sat in my office drawer like an old receipt. But that night, I got a notification. A new iMessage. From Jason. You ever open a message thread knowing it's going to hurt? I did. And I opened it anyway. What I found wasn't just proof. It was confirmation that these two didn't just fall in love. They bonded over betraying me. Here's the first thing I read. Jason. Does he still wear that sad little polo shirt with the stitched collar? Face with tears of joy. Emily. Every damn week. He thinks it's his power shirt. I can't. Jason. Bro probably irons it like he's going to war. Emily. LMAO, stop. I feel bad. But like. Also no, I don't. Jason. You're with me now. You upgraded. My hand tightened around the tablet. Not out of rage, but disbelief. They were turning me into a meme. You ever realize that someone you trusted completely has been collecting your quirks? Not cherishing them. Cataloging them. To laugh about later with someone else. The way I made coffee. The way I said, let's circle back. The playlists I used while cleaning. All turned into inside jokes for two people who used to pretend to love me. I kept reading. Because once you're that deep into the abyss, you might as well keep falling. Emily. I faked a headache last week so he wouldn't touch me. He looked so sad it almost worked. Jason. You're a savage face with tears of joy. Emily. Just waiting for the right moment to cut the cord. He's so nice it's annoying. Jason. Imagine him finding out. Dude would probably say, thanks for your honesty, and move out. Emily. Exactly. Passive king. Guilt-free escape. That last line? That's the one that stuck with me. Guilt-free escape. She thought my calm was permission. That my quiet was weakness. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wanted to reply to a message not sent to you? Not with words, but with actions. I didn't say anything to her. Not yet. I didn't even move the iPad from the drawer. Because now I knew the full picture. They weren't just cheating. They were strategizing my erasure. But something else happened in that message thread, something unexpected. I scrolled further. Not to the start. To the end. Because the thread was still active. Still updated. Messages from the past few days. And not all of them were laughing anymore. Emily, why hasn't maintenance fixed the shower yet? It's been 4 days. Jason, relax. It's not like it's broken. Just drips. Emily, I told you it's driving me insane. I miss hot baths. I don't know. Peace. Jason, ugh, first world problems. Chill. Emily, this place is a mess lately. I can't focus. I feel like I'm rotting. That shift? That was the beginning of decay. You see, lust gets you in the door. But living together? That's the real test. And Jason, he wasn't built for tests. A few days later, I got another email from my maintenance lead. Apparently, Jason had cursed out a contractor in the hallway over a late paint job. He didn't know the cameras were still active. I reviewed the footage. Watched Jason yell at a man 15 years older than him like a petulant teenager. All while Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed, dead silent. Not supporting him. Not defending him. Just watching. You ever see someone realize they made the wrong choice in real time? I did. In HD. The messages kept coming. Emily, do you think we moved in too fast? Jason, are you serious right now? Emily, I'm just saying, maybe we should have waited. Jason, look, if you're gonna start that guilt trip BS, I'm out. Emily, never mind. That's when I smiled. Because you know what happens when two people unite through betrayal? They don't trust each other. Because if they cheated with you, they'll assume you'll cheat on them. It was unraveling, bit by bit, and I hadn't lifted a single finger. Not yet. But what happens when I do take action? When I drop the right message at the wrong time? When the screenshots she forgot to delete suddenly reappear? In the hands of someone new. That part is coming fast. The thing about leverage. You only get to use it once. Too early and it's wasted. Too late and the moment's gone. Instead, I printed the screenshots. High-res. Full color. No commentary. Just her words. Jason's words. All the jokes. All the lies. I put them in a manila envelope. Unmarked. And handed it to my courier. No return address. Just one instruction. Deliver to the 3rd floor unit. Knock. Walk away. I watched the footage from the hallway cam later that evening. Jason opened the door. Looked around. Grabbed the envelope like it was a bomb. Carried it inside. 10 minutes later, the hallway audio feed picked up something beautiful. Emily's voice, trembling. What is this? Jason, defensive. Don't look at me. Who took these? Who has these? She was pacing. I could see her shadow under the door. Jason said nothing, because he was starting to figure it out. And then, silence. Not a single text. Not a single email. She didn't even try to ask me about it. Because she knew. And silence, for a liar, is the sound of their story falling apart. But that was just the beginning. The screenshots weren't just an attack. They were bait. Because 2 days later, I got the message I was waiting for. Emily, can we talk? Simple. Direct. Tense. I waited 30 minutes before replying. Me? Sure. I picked the coffee shop across the street from their apartment. Because I wanted Jason to see her leave. I wanted him to wonder. Let the paranoia fester. Let the questions crawl. She walked in, sunglasses on. Hair pulled back. Not a trace of the confidence she used to carry. She didn't sit down right away. Was it you? I sipped my drink. Was what me? She slid the envelope onto the table. You know what this is. I nodded. She waited for me to say more. I didn't. You spying on me? She asked finally. No, I said. You left your iCloud logged in. The iPad. In my office drawer. Her eyes widened just slightly. Then she looked away. Right? There was a pause. She stared at her hands. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said. I laughed. Not loud. Just a single breath of disbelief. You didn't mean to mock me? That was me trying to cope. I cut her off. You laughed at me with the man you cheated on me with. You said my kindness was annoying. You said you were waiting for the right moment to cut the cord. And now you're here because it turns out your shiny new world isn't what you thought it would be. She didn't argue, because every word was true. I leaned forward. You don't miss me, Emily. You miss who you were when you were with me. She flinched. Not physically, just a twitch, barely there. But I saw it. And here's where things twisted. Because she didn't get angry. She got soft. She started crying. Right there in the cafe. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Just silent tears. And I could tell. This time it was real. But I didn't comfort her. Because this wasn't sadness for what she did to me. It was grief for the version of herself she destroyed. You said you wanted to cut the cord, I said. So why are you still here? She wiped her face, took a shaky breath. I don't know. And that was the first honest thing she'd said in months. She didn't apologize. Not really. But I didn't need her to, because the apology wasn't for me anymore. It was for herself. We sat there for another minute. Then she stood up, didn't say goodbye, just walked out. And across the street, through the cafe window, I saw Jason staring from their balcony, watching. The next day, Jason moved out. No explanation. No social media update. Just packed up and left. I don't know if she told him what happened in that coffee shop. But I do know what happened next. She didn't follow him. She stayed. Alone. In my apartment. Paying rent. Watching her dream unravel one quiet morning at a time. Because the screenshots weren't just messages. They were a mirror. And for the first time she couldn't look away. But what happens when a woman like Emily starts to spiral? When the walls close in and the life she left behind starts to look better than the one she chose? What happens when the man she betrayed is still in control of her roof, her lease, her entire reality? That's where we go next. You ever see a liar try to explain themselves when they know the lie's dead? They fumble. They stall. They hope silence will cover what their mouth can't. But when you don't interrupt them, when you just watch, that's when the real truth leaks out. The morning after Jason left, Emily knocked on my office door. My office. In one of the buildings I own, the same building she was still living in. Paying rent to the man she discarded. She didn't even text first. She just showed up. And I let her in. Let me set the scene. It's a gray Thursday. The rain's been steady all morning. Like background music in a slow-burn thriller. Emily walks in, hair tied, no makeup, hoodie 2 sizes too big. She's holding something in her hands. A letter. Folded. Already wrinkled from how tight she's been gripping it. She sits down without asking. Her eyes are swollen. She hasn't slept. But I don't offer her comfort. I wait, because if someone wants to confess, they'll start on their own. And she does. I lied to you, she says. The words land flat. Obvious. Expected. Useless. But I nod. She keeps going. I thought I was doing the right thing in some twisted way. Like starting over. Choosing myself. Her voice cracks. I thought Jason saw me. Like, really saw me. She looks at me now. Searching for something. I give her nothing. Just a calm stare. She swallows hard. But he didn't. Not really. He saw the version of me I was when I was with you. The good parts. The steady parts. She pauses. And when those parts faded, so did he. Let me ask you something. You ever listen to someone try to rebuild the bridge they burned? One broken plank at a time? That's what this was. Her words weren't for me. They were for the person she used to be. The version she left behind. Why are you telling me this now? Ask. She stares at the floor. Because I'm still living in your building. Paying rent. Living in a place I thought I earned, but I didn't. I stole it. Just like I stole the peace you gave me. She hands me the letter. It's a handwritten apology. 4 pages. Cursive. Neat. Careful. I don't read it. Not yet. Because this isn't about the letter. It's about her finally understanding that silence is not forgiveness. It's a verdict. I'm sorry, she says again. And this time, her voice is quieter, almost broken. And I ask her something I've wanted to ask for months. Did you ever actually love me? Or was I just the safest option? She looks up, startled. The question hits like a slap. I did, she says. I did love you. Past tense. It's always the past tense that gives people away. I lean forward, elbows on the desk. Emily, you didn't just cheat. You didn't just lie. You planned your escape in my bed. You laughed at me with him. You used my kindness as a cover and assumed I'd stay small just to make you feel big. She doesn't respond. I continue. But I didn't scream. I didn't expose you. I didn't kick you out. I know, she whispers. You know why? She nods. Because you're calm. I smile. Wrong. Because I'm dangerous. She flinches. Not because I raised my voice, I didn't. But because for the first time she sees me clearly. Not the soft-spoken husband. Not the dependable fallback. But the man who watched the storm build and built a fortress while it raged. I don't want anything from you, she says. I know, I reply. She stands up. Do you want me to leave the apartment? I pause. Let it hang. Then I say, no. You'll finish the lease. You'll pay full rent. You'll walk those same stairs and feel what it's like to build a life inside the wreckage you made. Her lip trembles. Keep going. You'll wake up every day in a space you thought was freedom. And every day it'll feel a little smaller. She wipes her cheek. I deserve that. I nod. Then I dismiss her. She leaves the letter behind. Door klicks shut. And I don't move for a full minute. Because even though I meant every word, a small part of me still remembers how she used to look at me. Before Jason. Before the rot. Before the calm turned into a weapon. But what happens when Emily starts to claw her way back into normalcy? When the man who betrayed me is gone, and she's left alone in a ghost of a dream, does she fade quietly? Or does she start reaching again? That's where things start to twist. And what I do next, it changes everything. You'd think a confrontation like that would be the climax, the final act, the exhale after the storm. But no, that wasn't the ending. That was the reset. Because what happens after the truth spills? After someone's exposed, they either collapse or start building a new mask. For the next few weeks, Emily kept quiet. No texts. No calls. No late-night knocking. She paid rent on time. She submitted 2 maintenance requests. A broken cabinet hinge and a leaky faucet. Both real. Both minor. But she didn't ask for me. She didn't request a favor. She was staying in her lane. Or so I thought. Let me ask you something. You ever watch someone try to rebuild their dignity from the scraps they left behind? They get polite, courteous, robotic. They say thank you too much, smile too hard, overcorrect everything. That was Emily. Suddenly she was Miss Tenant of the Year. Didn't raise her voice once. Held the door for neighbors. Volunteered to help clean the stairwell after a pipe leak. But I knew better. This wasn't peace. This was penance. She was trying to pay off a debt, without asking what the interest was. Then came the emails. The first small things. Hi Mark. Just wanted to say thank you for fixing the cabinet so fast. Hope business is going well. I didn't reply. A week later, hey. Saw a cool article about real estate trends and thought of you. Forwarding it here. Hope that's okay. Still silence. Then, do you ever think about the old place? That one? That was bait. Let me tell you something about control. People think it means pulling strings, saying the right thing, dominating every room. But real control is silence, stillness, letting the other person squirm into honesty on their own. I didn't reply to any of her emails. Not one. And it drove her mad. Because she wasn't used to me ignoring her. She was used to being chased, apologized to, softened for. Now, she was shouting into a void. And just when she couldn't take it anymore, she left a note, slid under my office door. Handwritten, folded twice. No envelope. Please just talk to me. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I ignored it, because I was done giving oxygen to things that only knew how to burn me. But something in her shifted after that. She stopped being the remorseful ex-wife and started being curious. I caught her once, standing outside my building, just watching. Not walking, not visiting anyone, just standing. I watched from the window above, arms crossed. She never looked up, but I could tell. She was starting to wonder what I was really doing. Let me ask you something. When a liar finally has no one left to lie to, who do they become? That's what I was waiting to find out. But this story isn't just about her anymore. Because you might be wondering, what happened to Jason? The best friend turned traitor? The man who lit the match and walked away before the fire started? Well, he came back. 2 months after he vanished, I got a call. Blocked number. I never answer those. But that day I did. And there he was. Mark. His voice was strained. Tired. I didn't say anything. He kept going. I know I don't deserve your time, or your voice, or your patience. Still nothing from me. But I need to say it anyway, so I let him. He said he was sorry. Said he wasn't trying to take Emily. Just wanted something that felt real in a life full of fake. Said he didn't realize how badly he'd hurt me until she turned on him. Apparently, she'd started spiraling a month after I cut her off. Accused him of ruining everything. Threw things. Screamed. Blamed him for breaking the good part of her. And Jason, he cracked. Left without warning. He told me he moved out of state. Living with his cousin. Trying to reset. And he ended the call with this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know. I never stopped respecting you. That's why it eats me alive. I paused. Then said, don't ever call this number again. And hung up. Closure? Maybe. But some wounds don't scab. They just stop bleeding. Back to Emily. Now living in the apartment I own. Under my name. Paying me monthly. Trapped inside a version of her dream that feels more like a cage every day. That's the part no one tells you about betrayal. You might get what you wanted, but you'll hate what it costs. One morning, I passed her in the lobby. She looked at me like she wanted to say something. Anything. I nodded.
No smile. No anger.
Just acknowledgement. She hesitated. Bit her lip. Looked down. I walked away. Because I wasn't her ex-husband anymore. I was her landlord. And that's a different kind of power. But what happens when Emily reaches her breaking point? When the apartment becomes unbearable? When she starts asking herself whether she made a mistake she can never undo? And what do I do? When she finally asks to come back? That moment is coming. And when it arrives, I won't say no. But I won't say yes either. I'll say something far worse. You ever watch two people celebrate the start of something, while you already know how it ends? That was me. Standing on the other side of the glass, watching Emily and Jason post their first new apartment selfie. Big smiles. Messy hair. Boxes in the background. Caption. First day of the rest of our lives, old key sparkles. They looked free, like they'd escaped the cage. But what neither of them realized. They just locked themselves inside mine. Let's back up. Because I wasn't supposed to know they moved in. According to Emily, she was still figuring things out. Still adjusting. Still healing. And Jason, he was apparently just helping with furniture. But that lie didn't even last a week. You know what gave it away? The mail. See, in my buildings, tenants don't get mailboxes until their names are on the lease. But 3 days after Jason helped Emily move, I saw his name on a package in the lobby, delivered to Unit 307. The handwriting on the box. Emily's. I didn't say anything. Not right away. Because I wasn't angry. I was entertained. Let me ask you something. How much damage can two people do to themselves if you give them just enough rope? That week, I saw them more than I had in months. Jason walking up the stairs with a six-pack and zero awareness. Emily in leggings and oversized shirts that used to be mine. They looked happy, but not real happy. The kind of happy people perform for each other when they're not sure if it's working yet. That fragile, early-stage fantasy built on momentum, not meaning. And the cracks? They started fast. The first fight I witnessed wasn't loud. It was quiet, passive, awkward. Through the hallway mic, I picked up the edges. Jason complaining that the bedroom was too small. Emily snapping back that it's fine for now. He said, I thought you said this place had charm. She said, you said you liked it. And then silence, followed by the bathroom door slamming shut. That was day 6. By day 10, I got the first maintenance request. Kitchen drawer off its hinges. I personally approved it and personally delayed it. Not for long, just 72 hours. But long enough for them to notice. Long enough to feel the edges fray. I saw Emily in the hallway later that week. She looked tired. Hair in a bun. No makeup. Slippers. She smiled when she saw me. Not big. Not flirty. Just tentative. Hey, she said. I nodded. How are things? She asked. Things are good, I replied. That was it. No, how's the apartment? No, how's Jason? Just surface. Because even she didn't believe the show anymore. That night I got another message. Not from her. From Jason. Hey, is there any way to get an extra parking pass? My buddy's crashing for a few days. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent a building-wide notice the next day. Due to unauthorized guests and limited space, guest parking has been suspended until further notice. I knew exactly who it would frustrate, and that was the point. You ever watch two people fall apart in reverse? Like a movie rewinding itself. First the smiles fade. Then the conversations shrink. Then the distance between them on the couch grows wider. By week 3, they weren't even pretending anymore. I reviewed the security feed from outside their door. Jason coming home late. Emily already inside. He'd knock even though he had a key. She'd open slowly. Sometimes she'd hug him. Sometimes she wouldn't. Once, she opened the door and immediately walked away without saying a word. Jason just stood there for a second. Like he didn't recognize her anymore. Like he didn't recognize himself. But here's the best part. They still thought I didn't know. Didn't know they were living together. Didn't know they were unraveling. Didn't know the building, their home, was mine. So when rent came due again, and they struggled, I watched it all happen. The bounced payment attempt. The overdraft alert from Jason's bank. He forgot his bank was tied to a rent payment system I had access to. Oops. The quiet argument in their apartment. Emily, I thought you had this. Jason, it was a timing issue. I'll cover it by Friday. Emily, you said that last week. Jason, you think I'm trying to screw this up? Emily, I think you don't know what you're doing. You know what that is? That's not a fight about rent. That's a fight about regret. And what do people do when they regret each other? They start looking backward. At what they left. At what they had. And for Emily, that meant looking at me. But what happened when she finally knocked on my door? When she swallowed her pride and asked for a favor? And what did I make her do in return? That's coming next. And it gets better. You ever hear a knock that isn't loud, but still shakes the walls? That was Emily's knock. Soft, hesitant, like she didn't want to be heard. Just let in. I knew it was her the moment the door rattled. There's something about the way regret moves. Slow, uneven, almost apologetic. She stood outside my office, in the same building she now lived in, biting her lip like she was thur. I didn't open the door right away. Let her wait 30 seconds. That's enough time to question everything. Then I turned the handle. She looked small. And not physically, emotionally. Her energy was dimmed. Voice barely audible. Can I talk to you for a second? I stepped aside. Didn't offer a smile. Didn't ask why she was here. She sat in the same chair she used to joke about being too stiff. Now, she gripped its edges like she might fall. I didn't know who else to talk to, she said. That line. Classic Emily. Always turning herself into the protagonist of every moment. Even the ugly ones. I waited. No words from me. Just silence. She sighed. Rubbed her eyes. Jason's behind on rent. We're behind on everything. And I don't want this on my record. There it was. Not we're struggling. Not he's struggling. She said, Jason, She was separating herself from him, from the fall, and trying to crawl back toward stability. Toward me. Let me ask you something. You ever had someone betray you, and then come back asking for grace, from the very foundation they tried to burn? Would you give it, or would you sell them the water and charge by the ounce? I took a slow breath, then said, You want me to delay rent? She nodded. Just for this month. Or split it. Or apply it to next cycle. Why don't you ask Jason? I said. Her eyes flashed, just for a second. He's trying. Is he? She didn't answer. That told me everything. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thin envelope. Here's everything I could pull together. I know it's not the full amount, but I didn't take it, didn't even look. Just asked one question. What do I get in return? Her breath caught. What do you mean? You're asking for leniency, I said. I'm asking what I get. She stared at me, wounded, offended, but not surprised, because deep down, she knew this was coming. I'm not offering that, she said, defensive now. If that's what you think this is. I laughed. You think I want you back? She blinked. I leaned forward. I want a copy of your lease signed. In your name. Not Jason's. Yours. Confusion crossed her face. Why? Because when he bails, I said, I want to know exactly who to hold responsible. She didn't argue. Didn't even hesitate. Fine, she said quietly. And just like that, she made herself accountable. Now let's pause here. Let's really zoom out. Emily came to me for help. And in exchange, she tethered herself to a financial commitment she couldn't escape from. All because the man she left me for couldn't even pay a single month of rent on time. And I didn't lift a finger. I just sat behind the desk she once decorated with sticky notes and framed photos of us, and watched her shrink back into reality. A week later, I got the new lease. Signed. Sealed. Digital copy in my inbox. Jason's name? Nowhere to be found. And 2 days after that, he was gone. No warning. No note. Just gone. His stuff was missing. His closet empty. The only thing he left behind? A single post-it on the fridge. This isn't what I thought it would be. Of course it wasn't. Because fairy tales built on ash never hold. I waited. Waited for her to come to me. To explain. To beg. She didn't. Instead, she paid rent on time the next month. In full. Alone. And when I passed her in the hallway, she nodded at me. Nothing more. No small talk.
No apologies.
Just a look that said, I know what this is now. You ever see someone walk through the ruins of the world they built? It's humbling. It's honest. And in some twisted way, it's beautiful. Because only then, only in the rubble, do people really see themselves. And Emily? She was starting to see. But what happens next? What does she do with that realization? And what do I do when she makes her first real offer to make things right? That's coming. And it's not what you expect. You ever sit on a secret so long it stops feeling like a weapon and starts feeling like gravity? Not heavy, just there. Constant. Inescapable. That was the building. The one Jason and Emily moved into. They never knew the truth. Never asked. Because people rarely question comfort when it looks the way they want it to. But comfort can be custom built. And I built this. Let's go back, just for a second. Long before the affair. Before Emily's eyes drifted. Before Jason's hands wandered. Let's go back to the day I bought the building. Riverside Complex. 12 units. Clean brick. Good bones. The kind of place that doesn't try too hard. It had potential, but it needed work. The developer selling it was desperate. Caught in a quiet divorce. Liquidating assets fast. I got it for 30% under market value. I wasn't even looking for a new property that month. But something about the location, the vibe, the feeling, called to me. So I signed the deal. But here's the twist. I didn't put it under my name. You ever learn to disappear on paper? It's easier than you'd think. One holding company under another. Urban Elm Properties, LLC. managed by Weston District Holdings Incorporated, wholly owned by an anonymous Delaware trust. No face, no name, just a P.O. box and a bank account. Because when you're in real estate and you really want to own something without anyone knowing, you don't just buy the land, you buy the shadows around it. So when Emily and Jason found the unit, they thought it was luck. Great price, nice view, fast approval. They even joked about it to each other. I saw the messages. Emily, feels too easy lol. Jason, maybe we're finally getting good karma. Oh, sweet irony. Because karma didn't give them that lease. I did. And I didn't give it as a gift. I gave it as a stage. Let me ask you something. You ever watch a play where you wrote the ending, but the actors still think they're in charge? That's what this was. A performance. Two people who burned a house down, thinking the smoke wouldn't follow them. But the walls were mine. The keys were mine. The rent, every dollar they scraped together came straight to me. And they didn't even know it. I kept a file on the property, like I do for every building. Tenant history, maintenance logs, financials, photos from the day I bought it. But this file, it had something extra. A separate folder, labeled 307. Inside it, screenshots, security footage stills, email printouts, time-stamped hallway mic recordings. I kept everything. Not out of spite, out of strategy, because people forget the past faster than you think. But I never forget. And a file? It never lies. A few weeks after Jason left, I reviewed it again. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to remind myself just how far they'd fallen. I clicked through the stills. Emily laughing in the hallway, Jason whispering into her ear, her hand on his chest, the note he left on the fridge. This isn't what I thought it would be. Yeah, buddy. No one ever does. The building started to shift after he left. Tenants noticed. Emily got quieter, kept to herself, paid on time. She even sent a thank you message to the maintenance crew for fixing the garbage chute. Something she'd never done before. I didn't respond, but I watched. Then one day, I saw her outside, sitting on the curb, headphones in, crying. Not sobbing, not public drama, just silent tears. You can tell when someone's not crying for sympathy. She was grieving her choices. You ever see that? Someone grieving a version of themselves they know they can't go back to? That's what it looks like. And that's when I did something I didn't plan on doing. I opened the tenant portal, and I approved a rent reduction. Just for 1 month. Just $150.
No explanation.
She'd never asked, but I gave it. 2 hours later, she sent a message. Emily, hi. I just noticed the rent change. Is that a mistake? I replied,
No.
That was it. She didn't push, didn't fish for more, just said, thank you. That night I opened the file again. Sat there, staring at the photos, the messages, the evidence. All the ammunition I never used. I could have destroyed her. Could have exposed everything to her friends, her family, her employer. Could have leaked the screenshots to Jason's girlfriend at the time. Yeah, he had one. A little detail I left out earlier. That's a story for another chapter. But I didn't. Because revenge? That's too small for what they did. This was about legacy. Emily was now living in a building owned by the man she betrayed. She walked floors I paid for, opened cabinets I chose, paid rent to the person she once mocked in text threads as too passive to ever fight back. And the best part? She respected me more now than she ever did when we were married. Not because I forgave her, because I didn't need to. Power isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the click of a rent payment button. The silence of a declined call. The feeling of walking through someone's life after they swore they didn't need you anymore. But what happens when Emily tries to earn her way back into my life? Not as a wife, not as a friend, but as something new, something twisted, something broken, something real. That's coming. And the line she crosses next, she can never uncross it. You ever have someone come back into your life, not because they miss who you were, but because they finally see who you are now? That's what Emily was about to do. And the way she did it, not with a grand apology, not with flowers, not with tears. No, she showed up with a casserole. It was a Tuesday evening. I was locking up the side entrance of the building after reviewing the basement boiler panel. Something routine, mindless. And there she was, standing in the hallway, Tupperware in her hands, like we were still married. Like everything in her world hadn't collapsed, leaving only this moment to rebuild from. "Dinner," she said quietly. "I made too much." I looked at it. Lasagna. Her "I'm trying" meal. She used to make it when she felt guilty about something. Missed an anniversary. Forgot to wash my favorite hoodie. Called my mother too controlling during dinner and saw my face fall. This dish was her version of a white flag. But now, it just looked cold. I didn't take it. Not right away. Instead, I asked, "Why are you really here?" She blinked. "I told you. I made too much." "Emily." Her shoulders dropped. She looked away, then whispered, "I miss being seen." That stopped me. Because that line, that was real. Not, "I miss you." Not, "I want to come back." Just, "I miss being seen." And for the first time in months, I spoke without armor. "You were always seen," I said. "You just stopped looking at the person who saw you." She flinched, then handed me the lasagna. "You don't have to eat it. I just needed to feel like I gave you something, even if it's stupid." I took it, not because I wanted it, but because I wanted her to see that I could, that I was capable of acceptance, even if it didn't mean forgiveness. "Let me ask you something. What do you do when the person who wrecked your life starts walking around like they're rebuilding it? Do you shut the door? Or do you crack it open and watch what they do next?" I didn't invite her in, didn't offer to talk. I just said, "Thanks." She nodded, turned, walked away. But halfway down the hall, she paused. "Mark." I looked up. "If I ever wanted to do things differently, would you even let me?" I didn't answer, just turned the lock on the door. And let that be the answer. But that wasn't the end. Because the next day I found something new in the file. Something I didn't put there. A handwritten note slipped under my door. No envelope. Just 5 words. "I see you now. Finally." Signed E. I added it to the folder. Right behind the screenshots. Because even guilt, even change, is still part of the story. And here's the twist. I believed her. Not all the way. Not blindly. But that version of her, the one writing notes instead of excuses, the one showing up without demand, was closer to the woman I once loved than she'd been in years. Still fractured. Still incomplete. But honest. That night I ate the lasagna. Alone. And it tasted like 2 things. Memories I couldn't forget. Power I'd never give up again. Because you can't undo betrayal. But you can decide what to do with the pieces it leaves behind. And sometimes, you build an empire out of them. One quiet, well-documented folder at a time. But what happens when Emily stops waiting for permission and starts asking to be part of my world again? Not as a wife, not as a tenant, as something far more complicated. That's where things start getting blurry. And what I do next, it'll redefine everything. You ever know something about someone and just sit on it? Not because you're scared, not because you're unsure, but because you want to see how long they'll keep pretending it's hidden? That was me, watching Emily, listening, collecting. See, here's something no one knew. Not even her. The building? It wasn't just mine. It was wired. Nothing illegal.
No bedrooms. No bathrooms.
Nothing private. But the common areas? Stairwells, hallways, lobby, entry points, all covered. And the mics? They weren't there for fun. They were installed after a tenant vandalized the stairwell with graffiti. That was 2 years ago. They stayed. Quiet, subtle, unobtrusive, but on. Always on. You know what you hear when people think no one's listening? The truth. Always the truth. Let me set the scene. It's late. Nearly 11 p.m. Emily's on the phone in the hallway. She's pacing, barefoot, hoodie zipped up to her chin. Voice low, tone sharp. I cue up the feed. I already know who she's talking to. Her sister, Tara. They've always been close. But Emily didn't tell Tara the whole story. Not yet. Emily. No, I'm not going to ask him for anything.
Jesus, Tara. Tara, mufalid.
You said rent's tight. You said you can't breathe in that apartment. Emily. I can't. But I'm not crawling back to Mark. He already knows I'm drowning. That's the worst part. He's watching me do it.
Tara.
Then leave. Move out. Emily. To where? You want me crashing on your couch for 6 months?
Tara.
I want you to stop martyring yourself. Emily. It's not martyring. It's penance. Long pause. Then almost a whisper. Emily. I think I needed this. I think I needed to break everything. Just to understand what I destroyed. You ever hear someone confess indirectly? Not to you. To someone else. In words wrapped in regret. That was it. The first real thing she'd said about it. And I didn't even have to ask. I watched her hang up, sit on the floor, lean back against the wall. She looked up at the ceiling and said to no one, I wish he'd just scream at me. It'd be easier than this silence. Then she stood, walked back to her apartment, didn't see the camera above her, didn't know the man she was talking about had just heard every word. Let me ask you something. What's colder than revenge?
Surveillance.
Because it's not loud, not violent, not dramatic. It's quiet, unrelenting. A mirror they don't know is reflecting them. I kept the audio, archived it, labeled it, regret Emily night 7. Not because I planned to use it, but because if I ever forgot how far she'd fallen, I wanted to remember. You know what the funny part is? People think silence is mercy, but silence is more powerful than punishment. Silence makes them talk to ghosts. The next day, I reviewed older audio logs. Back when Jason still lived there. Week 2. Around 1:30 a.m. Arguing near the stairwell. Emily. I thought this was going to feel better. Jason. Jesus, here we go. Emily. Don't here we go me. You said this would be a clean slate. Jason. Yeah, and you said you were done being his shadow. Emily. I left him, not because I hated him, but because I stopped recognizing myself next to him. And now I don't even recognize you. Jason. Maybe you don't like who you are when there's no one left to blame. Silence. Then a door slam. End recording. I rewound it. Listened again. Because in that line, I left him, but I didn't hate him. I heard something she never told me. She wasn't running from me. She was running from who she thought she were becoming. She just blamed me for making her feel trapped. And Jason was just the nearest exit. But now, the exit was cold, cracked, and quiet. That week, Emily started knocking on more doors. Not mine. Other tenants. Bringing up issues. Asking questions. Helping carry packages upstairs. It wasn't fake. I watched it unfold like someone desperate to do something right. Finally, she started showing up. For the building. For herself. Almost like she was trying to earn the space she took up again. And I let her. Because observation without interference? That's how you really study change. But what happened when she finally stopped trying to fix her image and started asking how to fix what she broke? What happened when she found out she'd been watched all along? That the building she thought was a second chance was a stage? That moment? It's coming. And she's not ready for it. You ever wonder how long you can watch someone before they feel it? Before some ancient instinct tells them, you're being seen. That's what started happening to Emily. She didn't say it out loud. She didn't knock on my door. But something changed. She started glancing over her shoulder in the hallway, closing her blinds tighter, pausing longer before opening her door, like some invisible presence was trailing her. She was right. Now let's be clear. I didn't bug her apartment, didn't tap her calls, didn't cross the line, but she didn't know that. And uncertainty? That's more effective than truth. Because when you're not sure what someone knows, you start giving everything away. Case in point, Tuesday night, trash day. She was walking down to the dumpster behind the building, talking to herself. She didn't know there was a camera pointed at the alley. Didn't know the audio would pick up her mumbling. But I heard it, clear as day. I know you see me. Just say something. Please. Just like that. To no one. To me. That was the moment I knew she was starting to break. Not in a dramatic crying on the floor way, but slowly, from the inside. Not because she was guilty, because she was tired. Tired of pretending she still held the pen in this story. Tired of building a version of herself that could survive in silence. Tired of me staying S. She dropped a note into my mailbox. Short. 10 words. If you want to say something, I'm listening now. I stared at it for 10 minutes before I even unfolded it. Then I folded it back up, filed it under the Emily tab, and didn't respond. Because I wanted her to ask a different question. Not, will you talk to me? But, how long have you been watching? And she finally asked it. 2 days later, at the mailboxes. It was morning. I'd just gotten back from a tenant meeting on the east side. She was there. Hoodie, hair in a braid, eyes alert. She waited until I opened my box, then stepped beside me and said, "The hallway camera outside my unit, does it have audio?" Straight, to the point, no games. I didn't look at her when I replied, just said, "Yes." Her jaw tightened. She nodded, slowly. Then, "Since when?" "Since before you moved in." That landed hard. She turned to face me now. "So you've heard everything. Only what was said in public spaces." That wasn't a denial. That was a confirmation with boundaries. She didn't ask which nights. She didn't need to. She already knew the worst things she'd said weren't in her bedroom. They were in the halls, the stairwells, the late-night phone calls. Let me ask you something. How would you react if you found out the person you betrayed never left the room? Emily didn't cry, didn't lash out. She just exhaled and said, "That explains everything." "What does?" I asked. She looked away toward the street. "Why you didn't destroy me. Why you let me rot slowly instead." And then, with more honesty than I expected, "You were watching the whole time, weren't you? Just watching to see if I'd rot or rise." I nodded. "I needed to know who you really were." "And now you do?" she asked. "That part?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure yet. She took a step back, put her mail under her arm, then said something strange. "If I give you the full truth, do I get to stay?" I blinked. "What truth?" "All of it." That night, she left a folder at my door. Inside, every message she and Jason ever sent. The screenshots I already had, and more. New ones. Ones that hurt in a different way. The kind where she said things like, "I wish Mark would just cheat on me so I could leave with a clean conscience." And, "He's so good I feel disgusting next to him." And finally, "I think I'm afraid he's not boring. I think he's unshakable. And that makes me feel weak." She printed it all. Pages and pages. Like she wanted me to sentence her. Or forgive her. Or something. But what she didn't know is that I already had my verdict. The day she moved in, I made my decision. She would stay. Not because she deserved to, but because she needed to see what it means to earn a roof you once burned. I left a note under her door the next morning. "Your lease renewal's been approved. No changes. Welcome to year 2. No smiley face. No warning. No closure. Just the facts. Because when the judge is quiet, that's when the sentence is permanent." But what happens when Emily finally stops being afraid of me and starts being curious? When power shifts again, not back to her, not back to me, but into something unfamiliar? What happens when the landlord and the tenant start needing each other in a way that has nothing to do with rent? That's what comes next. And it's the beginning of the strangest chapter yet. You ever hear the phrase, "Oh, nothing, fear nothing"? Sounds powerful, doesn't it? But it's a lie, because there's always something owed. And debt doesn't just come in dollars. It comes in glances, in silence, in the way someone walks past you like they know your entire story, and you don't even know what chapter they're on. That's what it felt like Every time Emily and I crossed paths now, she'd nod,
I dénote.
like we were equals. But she still owed me. Not rent. Reckoning. The first missed payment came in January. Not surprising. Winter hits hard when you're already fragile. And Emily? She was already held together with duct tape and borrowed grace. The due date passed, no payment. No excuse. Just silence. I waited 3 days. Then I sent a message. Not from Mark. From management. Subject: Rent Notice, Unit 307. Body: Dear tenant, this is a friendly reminder that your rent payment for January has not been received. As per your lease, payment is due on the 1st with a grace period through the 5th. Please remit payment immediately to avoid penalties. Weston Urban Holdings. Cold. Clean. Unmistakable. She responded that evening. Emily: Hi. I'm sorry. I didn't forget. Just sorting out some financial stuff. It'll be handled by Friday. Not Mark. Can we talk? Not, is there anything you can do? Just straight to the point. She knew better now. I didn't respond. I just waited. Because waiting, that's its own kind of interest. Friday came. No payment. Saturday passed. Still nothing. Then Sunday, 11:58 p.m. I got a notice from the system. Partial payment received, $937.50. Her full rent was $1,250. She'd only paid 3/4. No message.
No explanation.
Just a little red notification in my landlord dashboard. Now let me ask you something. When someone gives you less than what they owe, and doesn't say a word about it, are they hoping you'll ignore it? Or are they hoping you'll confront them? I didn't do either. I sent a second message. Subject: Outstanding balance, Unit 307. Body: Dear tenant, please be advised that your January payment has been received partially. The remaining balance is $312.50 and must be submitted within 72 hours. Failure to do so will result in late fees as per your lease agreement. Thank you. Weston Urban Holdings.
No signature.
No name. Just the faceless tone of the system she used to ignore. Now it was watching her. Monday afternoon, she knocked on my office door. Again. This time, no lasagna.
No tears.
Just a debit card in hand. She didn't wait for an invitation. Can I pay this directly to you? I looked up. She was wearing a black coat, slightly frayed at the sleeves. There was something tired in her eyes. Not sad. Just spent. I nodded. She stepped forward. Card already in the machine I kept on my desk. Tapped. Approved. Payment successful. She turned to leave. But just before opening the door, she said, You ever get tired of watching me fall? Let me tell you something. That question, it wasn't accusatory. It was genuine. Not bitter. Just exhausted. I didn't answer right away. She waited, still holding the doorknob. I said,
No.
Because you're not falling anymore. She blinked. What am I doing then? I leaned back in the chair. You're learning gravity. She left without saying anything else. Didn't slam the door. Didn't pause dramatically. Just walked away. But the look in her eyes? It shifted. She didn't look broken anymore. She looked aware. And awareness? That's the first step to transformation. That week, she started changing routines. Woke up earlier. Took walks before work. Stopped hiding behind hoodies and silence. Started saying hello to neighbors again. Started holding the door open for delivery guys. Nothing big. Just small steps. But small steps taken consistently carve paths. Even through rubble. You ever see someone who was drowning learn to swim again? Not because someone saved them, but because they got tired of waiting for rescue. That's what Emily looked like now. Tired, but moving. But the money, that was still tight. She was working double shifts. Freelancing. Selling old clothes online. I saw the packages. I saw the emails. I saw the hunger in her effort. She wasn't asking me for grace anymore. She was earning it. And that did something to me I didn't expect. I started seeing her less like a ghost from a failed marriage, and more like a person trying to become someone new, still scarred, still flawed, but no longer hiding. But what happens when a person like Emily, someone who's finally facing herself, starts asking not for favors, but opportunities? What happens when she asks to help, to work, to step out of the role of tenant and become something else? That's where things start shifting again. Not back to love, not to revenge, to something stranger and far more dangerous. You ever owe someone so much that paying them back in money feels insulting? That's where Emily was now. The rent was current. The lights stayed on. No missed payments. No drama. But she wasn't just trying to survive anymore. She was trying to serve. Started small. Do you want help repainting the stairwell? Would it help if someone organized the supply closet in the basement? I can drop off notices to the tenants on my floor if you're short-staffed. These weren't favors. These were offerings. Unspoken messages wrapped in action. Like she couldn't say what she wanted from me, but she could try to prove it. That she was useful, capable, safe. I didn't say yes. Not right away. I let her dangle. Let her make the offers. Let her show up. Every day she passed me in the hallway, there was a look in her eyes. Did I do enough today? It wasn't manipulative. It wasn't desperate. It was hopeful and cautious, because people like her, people who burn bridges they later wish they'd cross slower, they don't ask to rebuild. They just start stacking bricks. Quietly, one at a time. So one afternoon I gave her a task. The empty unit on the second floor needs to be deep cleaned before showing. You want it? She froze. You mean, like, officially? Yeah, I'll pay you. Standard rate. She blinked like I'd offered her a second chance to breathe. I can do that. You'll need to sign a temp contract. I'll sign whatever you want. I watched her carefully, because the way she said it, it wasn't casual. It was reverent. That's when I realized something. She didn't just want to work. She wanted to be trusted again. Even if it was just with keys and bleach. She cleaned that unit like it was sacred ground. Left it sparkling. Cabinets wiped. Walls scrubbed. Even the AC vent filters were replaced. She left a sticky note on the fridge. Hope this meets the standard. Let me know if it doesn't. It did. It exceeded it. So I gave her another one. And another. Suddenly, she was helping with turnarounds, tenant move-outs, even painting trim on vacant units. 10 hours a week became 15, then 20. And with every task, she walked a little taller. Let me ask you something. You ever watch someone climb out of a hole and realize they've been building a ladder with pieces of their former self? That was Emily now. Stronger. Not smiling like before. Not flirty. Not fake. Just focused. And maybe, for the first time in years, genuine. But then came the night I wasn't expecting. Late. I was in the building's back office, updating lease renewals. Door creaks open. It's Emily holding a flash drive. This is the updated tenant log. I cleaned it up, removed duplicates, updated emails, phone numbers. You mentioned needing it last week. She stepped forward, set the drive on my desk, then just stood there, waiting. What is it? I asked. She didn't sit. She didn't fidget. She just looked at me and said, "Do you still see me as her?" That question hit harder than I wanted to admit. I knew exactly what she meant. Her. The woman who mocked me behind my back. Who sneaked Jason into my life while I made her dinner. Who said, "I love you," with a mouth full of lies. I didn't answer right away. She took a breath. Because I don't. Not anymore. I'm not saying I've earned anything. But I don't want to be judged forever by what I was when I was lost. Still, I said nothing. Then she added, softer, "You can keep watching me. I'm not afraid of that. I just hope, at some point, it won't be surveillance anymore. It'll be trust." She left after that. Didn't wait for a response. And me? I sat there with her flash drive in one hand, and her words circling my brain like they were trying to rewrite every file I'd ever saved. That's when I opened the property file again. The one marked 307. I read every screenshot, every message, every still frame. Then, for the first time, I created a new folder, labeled Emily After, and I moved the flash drive inside. Not because she'd earned redemption, but because she'd earned a second chapter. That month I waived her rent. She didn't know until she got the receipt. She texted, "Emily, was this a mistake?" I replied, "Me."
No. No explanación.
Just the same clean language I used when she tried to lie her way through love. Except this time, the silence wasn't a wall. It was a doorway. But what happens when second chances get confused for second beginnings? What happens when forgiveness blurs into something more? Into something riskier? Into something neither of us wanted to name, but both of us felt? That's where this story goes next. And it's more complicated than either of us was prepared for. You ever watch karma work slow? Not the flashy kind. Not the instant, poetic, car crash on the way to cheat karma. I'm talking about drip karma. The kind that leaks through ceilings, scratches in the walls, and creaks at 2 a.m. That was Unit 307. Emily's apartment. The one she thought would be her fresh start. The one Jason picked. The one I let them move into, knowing. It started with the smell. Musty, damp, sharp around the edges. Emily noticed it first because she was cleaning more now. Her message was polite. "Emily, hi, not urgent, but there's a weird mildew smell in the coat closet. I aired it out, but it keeps coming back. Just flagging in case it's something deeper. Professional. Precise. No panique." I responded through the property portal. "Management, thanks for reporting. We'll schedule an inspection this week." That was a Thursday. I scheduled it for Tuesday. Because again, this wasn't sabotage. It was timing. In the meantime, the mice showed up. Not an infestation. Just one or two. Tiny. Almost cute. They came through the gap near the baseboard by the heater. An old issue in 2 of the Riverside units during colder months. Fixable. But not immediate. And while they never reached the kitchen, they reached the bedroom. Emily found droppings near her nightstand. Let me ask you something. You ever see a person who's trying to rebuild themselves get tested? Like the universe is asking, do you really want this? Because this was that moment. Old Emily would have screamed, demanded a new unit, pulled the victim card like a magician pulls doves. But this Emily? She handled it, put out traps, cleaned again, messaged maintenance with photo evidence, time-stamped, calm. She even signed the report with a quick, "Let me know how I can help." So I helped, sort of. I sent my guy, not the fast one, Rob, mid-50s, works slow, talks slower, fixes everything, but he never rushes. He walked through the unit with Emily watching, then told her, "Closet's got moisture pockets in the drywall, probably a pipe issue in the outer wall. We'll have to open it up." Emily just nodded. "How long will it take?" He scratched his chin. "Few days minimum, maybe a week. Depends what we find." "Should I move out temporarily?" He looked at me. I answered, "No need. We'll seal off the closet and work from the hallway. You'll barely notice." A lie, a useful one. By Friday, the wall was open. By Saturday, the mold was visible. Black streaks behind the insulation. Small but real. That smell? Not mildew. Mold. The real kind. The legal kind. The kind that gets property managers sued if they don't handle it within a reasonable time frame. So I handled it. Efficiently. Visibly. But slowly. Because I needed her to feel it. Not suffer. Feel. There's a difference. Suffering is cruel. Feeling? That's transformational. She stayed in the unit during repairs. Slept on the couch. Kept windows cracked. Wore a hoodie and socks indoors because the airflow was cut off while the crew worked. Never complained. Never raised her voice. Just kept showing up. And then, her phone charger shorted out. Not her fault. Old outlet. Too many plugged-in devices during the drying process from the dehumidifiers. The surge killed the power in half the unit. Another request. Another technician. Another week of inconvenience. You know what most tenants do at this point? Break lease. file complaints, call the city. But not her. She started joking about it. Saw me in the lobby one morning, said, "Think the building's mad at me?" I smiled, first time in weeks. Said, "Maybe it's testing you." She paused, nodded, said, "Good. I need that. Let me ask you something. What do you do when the person you wanted to punish starts turning your consequences into character?" Because that's what was happening, and I hadn't planned for it. The girl who once rolled her eyes at responsibility now carried buckets of drywall into the hallway for the contractors. The woman who once joked about my clothes behind my back now swept dust off the shared stairwell without being asked. She was becoming someone new, and I was watching, still calm, still distant, but no longer cold, because something was shifting, and I didn't know whether I liked it or feared it. But what happens when the mold is gone? When the repairs are finished? When the walls are sealed and the mice are trapped and the chaos quiets down? What happens when the dust settles and we're both still standing there, looking at each other? No lies, no noise, just whatever comes next. The thing about repairs, they end. Eventually the noise stops, the tools are packed up, the contractors leave, and what's left is silence. By the third week, the closet was sealed, the drywall replaced, the outlets rewired. Mold report came back clear. Dehumidifiers removed, fresh paint drying. Everything normal, except it wasn't, because now there was nothing left to blame.
No distractions. No excuses.
Just Emily, in her unit, alone, with herself. She sent one last message to maintenance. "Emily, just wanted to say thank you for handling everything. You've all been great." I read it 3 times. Not because it was surprising, because it wasn't, and that somehow was surprising. She'd earned her comfort now. The apartment wasn't just a consequence anymore. It was a choice, a place she stayed in not because she was stuck, but because she wanted to, because she could face it. "Let me ask you something." "I made extra," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "No lasagna this time?" A small smile. "No agenda either." I stepped aside. She walked in, set one mug on the table, sat on the couch like it was unfamiliar ground, sipped once, then said, "It's weird. The apartment feels different now." "How so?" "Lighter. Like something finally left." I knew what she meant. It wasn't the mold. It was him, Jason. His presence had lingered long after he left. His echo in the walls. The smell of betrayal still fresh in the curtains. But now, that was gone. She'd scrubbed it out. With soap, sweat, and silence. She looked around. "This place, it wasn't ours, you know? Not really. It was always yours." I didn't respond, because it was true. It was mine. Even when she thought she'd escaped me. Even when she believed she was starting fresh. She turned to face me. "I think that's why I stayed. Deep down, I think I needed to live in the world you built. Because the one I built with Jason." She shook her head. "It was cardboard. Let me ask you something. What do you say when the person who wrecked your life finally admits they never understood the foundation they walked away from? Do you accept it? Do you twist the knife? Do you ignore it?" I said, "You know what I learned watching you?" She leaned forward, cautious. "What?" "That you don't need forgiveness." Her face fell, but I kept going. "You need a mirror, one that doesn't lie. And this building, this life, this version of me," I gestured around us. "It is the mirror." She looked down, fingers wrapped tight around her mug, then whispered, "I don't know who I am without shame anymore."
Isterte here.
Let the moment hang, then said, "Good. That means you're ready to figure it out." She stood up, paused in the doorway, then turned back. "Do you still think about what we used to be?" I thought about lying, then didn't. "Sometimes." She nodded, like she needed to hear that more than she expected. Then she left. That night I didn't sleep, because something had changed again. Not externally, not visibly, but internally. I wasn't just the landlord anymore. I wasn't even just the ex. I was something else. Some strange combination of witness, architect, and ghost, haunting a building she now called home. And the scariest part? She wanted me to stay. But what happens when comfort turns into dependency? When mutual understanding starts to look like something deeper? When two people, bound by pain, start building something, not romantic, but real? That's where this goes next. And trust me, the next request Emily makes, it changes everything. You ever have someone ask you for something, and you already know what it costs before they say the words? That was the look on Emily's face when she knocked on my door again. Not desperate, not dramatic, but measured, like she'd practiced this moment in her head 50 times, and hated it all the same. It was raining. Not the cinematic kind, just soft, annoying drizzle. The kind that soaks you slowly and makes everything feel heavier than it is. She stood there in a black windbreaker, hands buried in the pockets. "Do you have 5 minutes?" she asked. I nodded once and stepped aside. She didn't sit this time. She stayed standing, near the wall, like she didn't want to imprint on the room. "I have a favor to ask," she said. "Of course you do." That's what I thought. But I didn't say it. Because this wasn't the version of Emily who asked for favors lightly. This was the one who'd learned to weigh every word. So I waited, and she gave it to me straight. My sister lost her place. Her boyfriend put hands on her. She paused there to let it sting. She's safe now, but she's got nothing. No job. No apartment. 2 kids. I told her I'd help her find something. I already saw it coming. "I need a unit," she said. "Something cheap. Anything. Just somewhere she can land. I'll help cover it until she finds work. I swear." Then she looked at me, and I mean looked, and added, "I'm not asking as your ex. I'm not asking as your tenant. I'm asking as someone who's finally trying to do something right before it's too late. Let me ask you something. What do you do when the person who shattered you starts trying to protect someone else from breaking the same way? Do you see that as growth? Or do you see it as manipulation?" I looked at her for a long time, then walked to my desk, pulled open the leasing cabinet, grabbed the folder labeled Vacant Q1. Inside, 3 units. One of them was unlisted. The basement studio. Low ceilings. Bad lighting. Cheap rent. But clean. Safe. I handed her the page. "This one's yours if you want it." She blinked. "No application? You'll co-sign?" She nodded. "Of course. And if she bails?" I said. "I won't chase her. I'll cover it." "You sure?" She swallowed. "I'm sure." I watched her look at the page again, like it was a key to something she didn't think she deserved to unlock. She folded it carefully, not sloppily, like it meant something. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You didn't have to say yes." "No," I said. "But you didn't have to ask either." She exhaled, not with relief, but with release. The kind that comes after you finally admit you can't do everything alone. She turned to leave, stopped in the doorway, said, "Thank you, really," then added quieter, "You didn't owe me this." And that's when I looked her in the eye and replied, "I know. That's why it counts." She left, and I stood there, door half open, the drizzle still tapping against the concrete outside. And for the first time since this all began, since the betrayal, the move-in, the silence, the surveillance, I realized something. We weren't enemies anymore. We weren't lovers. We weren't even rebuilding anything. We were something else entirely. 2 broken mirrors, trying to reflect just enough of each other to keep from cracking again. But what happens when doing the right thing opens the door to old feelings? What happens when Emily starts seeing me not as her landlord, but as her anchor? And what happens when I let her? That's where we're heading. And the storm's just starting again. You ever do something good and feel worse because of it? That's what it felt like the day Emily's sister moved in. Not because I regretted it. Not because I didn't believe she deserved safety. But because it reminded me who I used to be. The guy who solved things. Who made people feel safe. who held lives together without asking for recognition. And once again, I was doing that for someone who once called my kindness annoying. Funny how the world loops back on itself. Emily handled everything. The paperwork, the move-in, the cleaning. She scrubbed that basement studio like she was erasing every bad thing her sister had ever been through. Didn't ask me for help. Didn't ask for an extension. She just did it. And when her sister, Madison, walked through the door with her 2 kids, eyes swollen and quiet, Emily hugged her like she was the last warm thing left on earth. And I watched from the stairwell. Didn't interrupt. Just stood there and let the image burn into memory. You ever see someone finally act like the person they pretended to be? That was Emily. No makeup. No performance. No drama. Just showing up. Consistently. She texted me later that night. Emily, she's settled in. Thank you again. You didn't have to. I won't forget it. I didn't respond right away. And when I finally did, it was simple. Me. You said you'd cover the rent. Emily, I will. Every month. Me. I'm holding you to that. Emily, I'm holding myself to that. I almost smiled. Almost. Over the next 2 weeks, things shifted again. Emily and I didn't talk much. Not directly, but she kept showing up. She'd walk past the front desk with coffee for the maintenance team. Leave small bags of snacks in the laundry room for the tenants. Helped Madison get her kids into a public school nearby. No credit. No announcements. Just quiet work. And somehow, that got to me more than any apology ever could. One night, she left a note on my desk, folded in half. No envelope. Just her handwriting. I know you still don't trust me. I don't expect you to. But thank you for letting me start over. Even if you never say it, I see it. Let me ask you something. What do you do when the person who destroyed you starts becoming someone you respect? Not someone you pity. Not someone you tolerate. Someone you look forward to seeing even if you pretend you don't. That Friday, I left her a card. Not a response to her note. Just a generic business thank you card. Inside, you've done good work. Keep it up. No signature. Just typed. Clean. Neutral. Professional. But when she found it, she smiled. I saw it on the hallway cam. A real one. Not forced. Not flirty. Just grateful. And that scared me more than anything else. Because here's the truth. I didn't want to fall back into anything. I didn't want the old emotions. The old expectations. The hope. But hope? The stubborn. It grows in cracks. And Emily had created cracks in the concrete I'd carefully poured over everything we were. One night, I caught her walking out of the building just after midnight. No coat. No bag. Just her and the cold air. She sat on the steps for 15 minutes. Didn't cry. Didn't smoke. Didn't look at her phone. She just breathed. Like she was reminding herself she still could. When I asked her about it the next day, she didn't deflect. Didn't joke. Just said, sometimes it's the only time I don't feel like I'm waiting to be punished. And I said, you're not. Not anymore. She nodded. Maybe. But I still need to feel it. The cold. The quiet. It reminds me I'm not asleep anymore. We stood there for a moment. Too long, maybe. Then she asked, do you ever regret not screaming at me? I thought about it. Then said, no. Screaming is for people who still want to be heard. I was done listening. That shut the conversation down. And opened something else. Because the next night, she left tea at my door. Same mug as before. Same flavor. No note. Just a quiet offering. And I drank it. Because why not? Let me ask you something. What happens when 2 people who owe each other everything finally stop trying to settle the debt? What happens when kindness stops feeling like a game of one-upmanship and starts feeling like clarity? That's what we were walking into now. No labels. No plans. Just 2 people in the same building, on opposite sides of the same wound. But what happens when she asks for more than a favor? Not money. Not housing. Not help. Something bigger. Something riskier. That moment's coming. And when it lands, It changes everything, for both of us. You ever think you're done with someone, and then their shadow shows up at your door? That was Jason. Not in the flesh. Not yet. But in echoes. In mentions. In receipts. In messages not meant for me but somehow still found their way into my hands. Because ghosts don't knock. They just creep back in. It started with an envelope. Plain. No return address. Dropped in the rent slot at the main office. At first I thought it was junk. But inside, a photo. Jason. Smiling. Arm around a woman who wasn't Emily. Wearing a ring he didn't have before. Caption scribbled in red ink across the bottom. You're not the only one he lied to. No name.
No sender.
Just that. A picture worth more than 1,000 betrayals. Let me ask you something. What do you do when the man who destroyed your marriage turns out to be someone else's wrecking ball? 2. Do you laugh? Do you warn them? Do you care? I didn't tell Emily. Not yet. Because this was information. And information is currency. So I dug. Quietly. Logged into one of the property's Wi-Fi logs. Jason had used the building's guest network when they moved in. Pulled his old device ID. Cross-checked it against recent logins. Nothing recent. Good. But one login stood out from back in the first month. Device name, JPad2. Site accessed, crescentfamilyclinic.com/patients. Strange. Not porn. Not social media. The family clinic. I bookmarked it, then ran his name through a data aggregator I kept for tenant screening. And there it was. Jason Reynolds, emergency contact for Grace Reynolds, age 2. Let that sink in, because it sure made me sit down. The timelines didn't add up. Emily and Jason moved into the apartment just over a year ago. He left her less than 2 months in. But his daughter was 2, born before the affair, which meant Emily was never the only one. Jason had a life, a real life, with someone else, a girlfriend, family, and while he was sneaking around with Emily behind my back, he was doing the same to them. You ever feel betrayal all over again? But this time you're just watching it happen to someone else? It's a strange kind of déjà vu, but sharper, because you've already felt the cut, and now you're seeing someone else about to bleed the same way. I printed the clinic record, pinned the photo next to it. Then I sat there, staring at them both, trying to decide what to do. That evening, Emily stopped by the office, unannounced. She'd started doing that more often now, not with an agenda, just to check in. She stood in the doorway, sipping from a thermos. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said. I didn't answer, because maybe I had. She sat down slowly, across from me. Mark. I slid the photo across the desk. She looked at it, didn't react at first. Then her fingers curled tighter around the thermos. Who is she? She asked. I don't know, I said. But the child's his. She blinked. Wait, he has a kid? Had one before he moved in. Let the silence breathe here. Because that moment, that was the second time Emily's world shattered. And this time, it wasn't my hand swinging the hammer. She didn't cry, didn't curse. She just leaned back in the chair like her bones forgot how to hold her weight, and whispered. He told me he left someone for me, then added, I was the someone. Let me ask you something. What do you say to the person who destroyed you when you realize they were also being destroyed the entire time? Do you gloat? Do you console? Do you just listen? I chose the last one, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was revelation, and it was breaking her open in a whole new way. Emily looked down at the photo again, touched the edge. Then quietly, I don't know who I was when I believed him. I don't know how I didn't see it. I replied. Because you didn't want to. She nodded. That truth? It landed. Hard. She stood up, but didn't leave. She paced. Back and forth. Back and forth. Then she said something I didn't expect. I want to find her. The woman. She nodded. The mother. The one he really left. And what happens when you do? I don't know. But I need to know what lies we were both told. I need to see her. I leaned forward. You think that's about closure? She shook her head.
No.
I think it's about clarity. And I realized something right then. She wasn't doing this to punish Jason. She was doing it to understand herself. Because betrayal didn't just happen to her. She'd been part of the machine. And now, she wanted to look into the eyes of the other cog in the system and see if they recognized the same wound. But what happens when Emily finds her? What happens when two women who were lied to by the same man stand in front of each other? That's next. And it doesn't go the way anyone expects. You ever chase closure, only to find a mirror? That's what Emily was walking toward. Not justice, not vengeance, just something that felt like a full stop, or maybe a start over. She found the woman in less than 2 days. Name Riley Abbott. Age 29. Registered nurse. Mother of 1. Jason's daughter? Grace, 2 years old. Adorable in every photo. Round cheeks, bright eyes. The kind of smile only children and liars can pull off without effort. Riley's Instagram was private, but her Facebook? Public enough. Emily scrolled through the posts like she was stealing oxygen from them. Every birthday, every milestone. Posts from 18 months ago tagged Jason. Comments from friends. Photos of him in their kitchen, holding Grace in the hospital. And the most brutal of all? A post from the same month Jason moved in with Emily. Sometimes the people you love the most just disappear. But me and Grace? We don't quit. Let me ask you something. What do you do when you realize the man you destroyed your life for had already left someone else worse off just weeks before? Do you collapse? Do you rage? Or do you do what Emily did? She messaged her. No build-up.
No apologies.
Just this. You don't know me, but I think we were both with the same man. I have some truth I think you deserve. If you don't want it, I'll never contact you again. Sent at 9:44 p.m. Seen at 10:12. No reply. Then, the next morning. Riley. Meet me. Public place. No drama. Location dropped. A coffee shop near the hospital where Riley worked. Emily went. Didn't ask me to come. Didn't tell Madison. She went alone. Said it was something she had to do without shadows. But later that night, she came to my door. Didn't knock. Just stood there. I opened it. She looked like someone who'd walked out of a courtroom. Not guilty. Not innocent. Just processed. Can I come in? She asked. I nodded. She sat on the edge of the couch. Didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she whispered. She wasn't surprised. Riley. Emily nodded. She knew about me. Not my name. But she said she always felt there was someone else. Someone he was texting late. Hiding things from. She laughed. But it wasn't a happy laugh. More like an exhale through a cracked rib. She thanked me, Emily said, for confirming what she already knew. Then her voice dropped. And then she asked if I wanted to meet Grace. I sat forward. What did you say? Emily's voice broke just slightly. I said no. Because that little girl doesn't need to see another woman her father lied to. That silence that followed? That was the sound of a chain breaking. The one that had been wrapped around Emily's heart since the day Jason smiled at her like she was special. It didn't snap all at once. But it started. And once chains crack, they don't hold the same. She forgave me, Emily said. She sighed. I asked, what did you say? Emily didn't hesitate.
No.
And I never really was. Let me ask you something. What happens when someone finds peace and doesn't know what to do with it? Because that's what Emily was holding now. Something quiet, heavy, but strangely freeing. And peace is dangerous in the hands of someone who's used to war, because it makes them question who they are without the chaos. And that question is coming for both of us. You ever read a contract and realize it's more personal than any love letter? That was the lease renewal. 2 pages. Standard format. Date, name, rate, signature. But for Emily, it wasn't just paper. It was a declaration. Not of intent, of identity. Because signing a new lease, that meant she wanted to stay. Not just in the apartment. Not just in the building. In this life. The one she didn't run from. The one she chose. Came to her in the mail slot. A plain envelope like everyone else's. But I know she opened it slower than anyone else ever had. I imagine she read it like it might bite her. Like somewhere in the fine print, there'd be a sentence that said, "Sorry, you were never supposed to make it this far." She didn't sign it that night. Not the next day either. And I didn't press her. Because I knew what it meant. See, for Emily, the first lease was desperation. The second would be commitment. You ever watch someone stare down a choice? And no, it's not about logistics. It's about legacy. Because this time, she wasn't asking for shelter. She was asking to belong. She knocked on my office door 3 days later. Lease in one hand, pen in the other. Didn't say a word. She just walked in, laid it on the desk, looked me in the eyes, and said, "I need to ask you something before I sign this." I leaned back in my chair, waited. She took a breath. Not nervous, not fearful. More like someone trying to remember how to speak from their gut. Then she asked, "Have I earned this? Let me ask you something. How do you answer that? When the person who wrecked your world repaired the ruins with bare hands? Do you measure what was taken, or what's been given since?" So I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I said, "If you think you have to ask, then maybe you already know the answer." She nodded slowly, pressed the pen to paper, signed her name with a breath between each stroke. Then she said, "I'm not signing this to stay in the apartment." I raised an eyebrow. She added, "I'm signing it because I'm done running." And just like that, she stayed. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she chose the version of herself she only became here. The version forged in mold, refined in rent payments, sharpened through silence. But the story doesn't end with her signature. No, it starts again. Because the moment you decide to stop being a cautionary tale is the moment people stop looking at you with pity and start watching you with curiosity. And Emily was starting to be watched again. But this time not by me, by others, tenants, neighbors, parents at the school where she dropped Madison's kids off. People saw her now not as a mistake, but as a person who'd survived one. She started getting asked for help, advice, recommendations. Let me ask you something. What happens when the person you thought you'd bury starts becoming the heartbeat of the thing you built? And what happens when you're not sure if you should pull away or pull closer? Because that's the line I was standing on. And it was getting thinner. One evening, Emily brought me tea again. Same mug. But this time, she stayed. We sat at the little desk in the back office. She asked about my week. Told me about a new job interview. Then she said something unexpected. "If you ever wanted to leave this building, what would stop you?" I looked at her. "Why?" She shrugged. "I think about roots a lot now. Where I put them, who waters them, who steps on them. And," I asked. She looked down at her tea, then said, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm someone's reason to stay, or a reason they can't leave." Let that one hit you, because it hit me hard. She wasn't talking about me. Not directly, but it was there. In the way her voice didn't ask for an answer. Just space. To be heard. To be held emotionally if not physically. We didn't speak for a while after that. Just sat. Like two people who had nothing left to confess. But everything left to consider. But what happens when the lease is signed? The stability is secured. And all that's left is the emotion we've been too careful to touch? What happens when we stop pretending this is about property and admit it's about presence? That's what Chapter 12 leads to. And it doesn't go quietly. You ever stand in the middle of something stable and feel more off balance than you did in the chaos? That's what calm does to some people. It whispers. And the whisper is dangerous because it makes you start asking questions. Is this peace? Or is it just the silence before something breaks again? That's where Emily was now. That's where I was. And no contract in the world could anchor that kind of uncertainty. After she signed the lease, things changed. Not dramatically, Not publicly, but subtly, like gravity had shifted a half degree. She started locking her door at night again. Not out of fear, out of finality, the symbolic kind, like she wasn't waiting for someone to walk in anymore. She was choosing solitude, and that choice, it made her more visible than ever. She began walking the property grounds in the evening. Not aimlessly, purposefully. She picked up trash, checked the shared mailbox, talked to the older tenants like she worked here. Some even thought she did. That was how Madison phrased it one morning. You'd think Emily owned the place, the way people talked to her. And in a strange way she did. Not legally, but emotionally. Emily had become the soul of the building. She'd paid for it in shame, sweat, and months of silent penance. The walls remembered her, and somehow so did everyone else. Let me ask you something. What happens when the person who broke the system starts becoming the one holding it together? Do you forgive them? Do you need to? Or do you just watch? That's what I was doing now. Watching, trying to keep my distance. But the line between objectivity and interest, it was fading. Because every time I saw her walk the halls like she belonged, like she cared, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Curiosity. What would happen if I let the past go? Not forget it, not deny it, just stop carrying it. Could she and I actually become something again? Not lovers, not exes, just people. Two people who understood each other in a way no one else ever could. Then came the night of the power outage. Lightning storm, transformer blew. Whole block lost electricity. Emergency lights flickered on. Most tenants stayed put. Emily? She grabbed her flashlight and started checking doors. Unit by unit, just like I did. She didn't even ask. Just moved. Instinct. We crossed paths in the second-floor hallway. Her hair was tied up. Flashlight in one hand. Phone in the other. You missed 206, she said matter-of-factly. I raised an eyebrow. Did I? She grinned. Guess we're getting old. I smirked. Speak for yourself. We checked it together. Tenant was fine. Just asleep. We walked the hall in silence after. Then I stopped at the stairwell. You didn't have to help, I said. She turned to me. I wasn't helping you. Then who? She shrugged. Everyone. And then, more softly, myself, maybe. We stood there, flashlights casting long shadows on the wall. And for a brief second, I saw us again. The way we were before everything broke. Two people who meant well. Even if we didn't do well. She said it first. Do you miss it? I looked at her. Miss what? She didn't flinch. Us. Direct. Clear. No games. Just a question she needed an answer to. And I gave it. Slowly. Sometimes. Not the way it ended. Not what you did. But the way it felt before. She nodded. Then said, I miss that too. But I don't want it back. I just want to know it was real. It was. I need to hear you say it, she whispered. I need to know I didn't imagine all of it. You didn't. Silence again. But not the heavy kind. This time it felt like exhaling after holding your breath too long. Like forgiveness you didn't even know you had left in you. Finally letting go. And then, her phone buzzed. The power was coming back online. The moment just like that ended. She looked at the screen, nodded, stepped back, and said, Thank you for saying it. I think I needed that more than I realized. Then she left. No drama. No promises. Just closure. Let me ask you something. What happens when the person who once shattered you into pieces is now the only one who knows how those pieces used to fit? You don't run toward them. You don't run away. You stand still and let the moment pass. Because sometimes that's enough. But what comes next? That's not peace. That's not pain. It's possibility. And possibility is more terrifying than anything we've faced so far. Because it means neither of us knows what happens from here. And for once, that's not a threat. It's a question. You ever hear a knock on the door and know it's not just a person on the other side? It's a memory, a consequence, A choice you thought was buried showing up in a hoodie with bad timing. That's what happened on a Wednesday. 2:07 p.m. Rain outside, quiet inside. Then, knock knock. I opened the main lobby door and there he was. Jason, let me ask you something. What would you do if the man who stole your wife, wrecked your home, and walked out like it was a hotel stay suddenly showed up looking like he was the one who'd been robbed? Because that's what Jason looked like. Thinner, eyes darker, hair longer, like he'd forgotten to be someone worth impressing. But here's the most important part. He wasn't smug anymore. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't even trying to pretend he was in control. He looked like someone circling rock bottom and finally realizing it wasn't a myth. Mark, he said. I didn't move, didn't open the door any wider. He shoved his hands in his pockets. I just need a few minutes. I stared at him. Not angry, not emotional, just calculating. Because if you play chess long enough, even your enemy becomes predictable. I stepped back, let him in. He didn't sit, just stood there in the lobby, dripping wet, glancing around like the building remembered him too. Then he said it. I messed up.
No kidding.
I let him speak, not because I cared about what he had to say, but because some stories, you need to hear straight from the source. He'd moved in with a third woman, different city, didn't last. Grace, his daughter, had been legally declared under full custody of Riley. He hadn't seen her in 6 months. He'd lost his job. He was couch surfing. He didn't come to apologize. Not really. He came because he had nowhere else to go. And he said it plainly. I thought maybe you'd have a room. That line, that right there, was the moment I had to decide what kind of man I was now. Because Jason didn't just betray me. He used me. He used my house, my friendship, my silence. And now, he wanted to use my roof again. Let me ask you this. If the man who cracked your marriage like an egg stood in front of you shivering and broke, would you slam the door? Would you gloat? Would you help? Or would you do what I did? I said, I don't have a room, but I have a list of shelters. He blinked, shocked maybe, not at the rejection, at the respectfulness of it. He wasn't used to that anymore. Not now. He nodded once. Can I sit for a second? I gestured to the chair by the front window. He sat down, looked small, like all the weight he used to carry as arrogance had finally settled into shame. Then the elevator dinged, and the moment cracked wide open, because Emily stepped out, carrying tenant mail, wearing a green raincoat, hood down, hair damp, and she froze. So did Jason. Time bent, like the past and present collided and neither knew how to speak the other's language. He stood up slowly. He said. She didn't answer, didn't flinch, just stared at him like he was a test. One she'd already studied for. She handed me the stack of mail, then looked Jason in the eye and said, whatever you came here for, it's not here. Let me tell you something. I've never seen a man deflate like that before. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rejection. It was irrelevance. Like he finally realized the people he'd used to define himself no longer needed his story to complete theirs. Jason left a few minutes later. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. Just walked into the rain.
No umbrella.
No home. No power. Just footprints fading behind him. Emily didn't speak for a while. She stood there in the lobby, arms folded, breathing slowly. Then she whispered, You think he'll come back? I shook my head.
No.
He was never the type to return to places that held him accountable. She nodded once, then added, Good. I don't want to be the place he breaks next. Let me ask you something. What happens when the person who used to define your worst moment becomes nothing more than a passing knock on the door? That's not revenge. That's evolution. And Emily? She had just evolved. But peace doesn't last forever. And what came in the mail that night was worse than any knock on the door. You ever open an envelope and feel your entire chest tighten before you've even read a word? That was the letter. Plain white. No return address. Typed label. Just my name. Not landlord. Not management. Just Mark. which meant it wasn't business. It was personal. Came that same night Jason showed up. Hours later, I was in the office sorting routine mail, rent checks, water bills, a new lease request from a couple upstairs. Then I saw it, tucked at the bottom, heavy, almost intentional, like someone made sure it wouldn't be missed. I opened it. Inside, 3 things. Printed email thread, a photo, a short, handwritten note. Let's start with the photo. Jason again. But not alone. Not with Riley this time either. Another woman, blonde, smiling, pregnant. Then the email. Jason's name at the top. The exchange between him and someone named A. Dates from last year. The subject line? We'll be fine. She's clueless. The email detailed Jason's plan to move in with Emily temporarily, because she'd take care of everything. Rent, bills, food. His soft landing while he got resituated. One line stood out. She still thinks I left someone for her. She doesn't realize she's just a pit stop. I read that sentence 3 times, because I remembered the way Emily smiled the day they moved in. Like she believed in beginnings. Like she thought she was someone's first choice, finally. And here was the truth. In ink, she was a bridge, not a destination. The note was the final nail. Handwritten in blue ink. Thought you should see what kind of man he really was, since she never got the full picture. Do what you want with this, but she deserves to know. A friend. I sat there for maybe an hour, just staring. Not angry, not sad, just numb. Because all this time, I'd thought the worst had already happened. The affair, the betrayal, the fallout. But somehow this was worse. This was confirmation. That Emily was a pawn. That Jason was a strategist. That I was just collateral. Let me ask you something. If you had proof that could break someone, even if it's true, would you show them? Would you put the final piece in place? Would you risk what little piece they've built, just to hand them the truth? I didn't sleep that night. I didn't throw the letter away either. I left it on my desk, sat in the dark and stared at it like it was a bomb. Ticking. Emily came by the next morning. Coffee. Warm smile. A kind of ease in her walk I hadn't seen in years. She sat down across from me, then noticed the papers. Her smile faded. She reached for the photo. I didn't stop her. She stared at it for a long time, then flipped it over. Saw the email. Read it all. No words. No flinch. Just stillness. Then, so I was a plan. Not a question. A verdict. Let me tell you something. The worst pain isn't betrayal. It's realizing you were never even significant enough to betray. You were just useful. She stood up. Didn't say a word. Walked to the office door. Paused. Then whispered, I need air. And left. She didn't come back that day. Not that night either. Her apartment lights stayed off. No messages. No notes. Nothing. I worried. Not in the possessive way, but in the human way. Because you don't come back from something like that without losing something. Your sense of self. Your sense of judgment. Your trust in your own intuition. And Emily? She'd finally found a version of herself that could breathe. This could choke it right out again. Let me ask you something. You ever watch someone rebuild for months, only to see them face a truth that could knock it all down in seconds? Because that was where we were now. And I didn't know if she'd walk away from the rubble again, or finally let it bury her. But when she did come back the next night, she wasn't broken. She wasn't even angry. She looked empty, like the pain had burned so clean, it left nothing behind. She sat in the office again. Same seat, same silence. Then she said, I don't want pity. You're not getting any. She nodded. Good. Then she added, I believed in something that never existed, and I lived in it, slept in it, ate dinner in it. That's not love. That's delusion. I didn't argue. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't finished. I can't keep defining myself by what he did to me, or what I did to you, or what we all did to each other. I have to get out of that triangle. I asked, where do you go instead? She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Forward. Let that sit for a second. Because sometimes clarity isn't loud. It's just final." She stood up. Same way as before. Except this time she didn't pause. Didn't wait. She just walked out. Not like someone escaping, but like someone finally done sitting in the same scene. What happens when the last lie is told? And no one cries? That's where we are now. The past is gone. And the future? It's about to take a shape none of us expected. You ever spend months circling around something and realize the only reason it still has power over you is because you never said it out loud? That was the silence between me and Emily. We'd said so much. Fought. Accused. Admitted. But we'd never said the one thing that hovered between every conversation. Why did you do it? Not why did you leave? Not why him? But the deeper question beneath all of it. Why was I never enough? And here's the thing. It wasn't about blame anymore. I wasn't looking for an apology. Wasn't fishing for guilt. I just wanted to understand. Because you can't rebuild something if the foundation's still full of unanswered cracks. And the only thing worse than betrayal is ambiguity. She came by late.
No coffee. No smile.
Just her worn hoodie, tied back hair, sleeves pulled over her hands like she was bracing for the cold inside her, not outside. "I need to ask you something," she said. I nodded. "Ask." She didn't sit, didn't move. She said, "Did you ever hate me? Let me ask you something. What would you say? If the person who burned down your life stood in front of you, eyes soft, voice fragile, asking if the fire they started actually left scars?" I stood up, walked over, and said, "Yes, I hated what you did. I hated how small it made me feel. I hated how I questioned my own worth for months because of you." Her jaw tightened. She didn't flinch. "But," I added, "I never hated you. Not once." She swallowed, hard, then said, "I hated me." She finally sat. Let her arms fall into her lap. Spoke again, quieter this time. "Do you want to know why I did it?" I didn't answer, because she was going to tell me either way. She needed to. Not for me, for her. I was scared. Of what? Of feeling ordinary. I blinked. She kept going. "You loved me so well. I didn't know who I was without the friction, without the chaos. You were stable. You were home. And I couldn't breathe in peace back then. I thought I wanted passion, but what I really wanted was noise." That line cut deep, because it made sense. Too much sense. "I wasn't bored with you," she said. "I was bored with me. And I thought if someone else wanted me, someone risky, someone reckless, it meant I still mattered." She looked up. "I was wrong. Let me ask you something. Can you forgive someone when the reason they left you had nothing to do with you? When it was never about your flaws, only their fear? Because that's the kind of forgiveness that doesn't feel like healing. It feels like letting go of a ghost you didn't even realize you were still clinging to." I sat back down. And for the first time in a long time, the room didn't feel like a courtroom. It felt like a confession booth. Not for sins, but for truths that had been starving for oxygen. I said, "You mattered to me because you were you. Not because you were easy, or hard, or chaotic. You didn't have to be loud to be loved." She wiped at her eye, didn't cry, just cleared something, then asked, "And now?" I knew what she meant. I paused, then said, "Now I see you clearly, and I'm not in love with who you were, but I respect who you're becoming." That landed. That freed her more than an "I forgive you" ever could. She stood again. Same door, same pause, but this time I spoke first. "Emily?" She turned. "Yeah. Why are you still here?" She didn't hesitate, didn't deflect, didn't joke. She just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Because I finally feel like I deserve to be." Let me ask you one final question. What happens when the question you've been too afraid to ask finally gets answered, and the answer doesn't hurt anymore? That's not closure. That's clarity. And clarity, that's the beginning of something else entirely. Something new, something honest, something earned. But life doesn't just let you have peace. Not without testing you. And the next tenant complaint isn't about mice, isn't about mold. It's about Emily. And it's going to force both of us to decide exactly what role we play in each other's lives. For real this time. It was 6:13 a.m. when the maintenance line buzzed. Not an emergency call. Just a tenant complaint. Unit 3A. Mrs. Devlin. She was always up early, sipping burnt coffee, scrolling neighborhood forums like it was her civic duty. She left a voicemail. I played it twice. Hi Mark. Just wanted to give you a heads up. That woman, Emily, I've seen her talking to the boys from 2C at odd hours. Seems innocent, but it's not a good look. Just letting you know before someone else files a report. Hope all's well. I sat there, staring at the phone. Tried to laugh. Couldn't. Because this is what happens when someone finally starts doing better. People look for something to blame. Emily had been helping the single mom in 2C. Late night babysitting. Walks with the boys around the block when their mom picked up an extra shift. Homework help in the lobby. It was innocent. Pure. But some people don't know how to see redemption. They only know how to doubt it. Called her. Told her about the voicemail. Didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't defend herself. Didn't explain. She just said, "Do you want me to stop?" I paused. Then said, "No. I want you to keep going. But I want you to know the weight of it." She exhaled. "Thanks for telling me." "Of course." Then silence. Not tense. Just heavy. Then she asked, "Do you ever feel like no matter what you do, someone's waiting for you to screw up again?" I answered, "Every day." She whispered, "Yeah, me too. Let me ask you something. What's harder, carrying shame, or carrying other people's expectations that you'll never really drop it?" Because that's what Emily was walking through now. The tightrope of recovery.
No applause.
No net. Just the constant whisper from the crowd. "Don't fall again. We're watching." But here's the thing about pressure. It doesn't always break you. Sometimes, it sharpens you. The next day, Emily sent out an email. To every tenant. A building-wide note. Subject line. Helping hands, free tutoring, babysitting, and after-school help. Body text.
Inachbors.
I know we all have different schedules, challenges, and needs. If any of you could use a hand, with kids, errands, or just someone to talk to, I'm here.
No charge. No expectations.
Just trying to give back in a building that gave me more than I deserved. Emily, Unit 1B. I read it, and I felt it. Because that wasn't performative. That was ownership. She wasn't hiding from her past. She was using it to build something useful. And you know what? Replies started coming in. Not judgment. Not suspicion. Gratitude. The couple from 4C asked if she could help their daughter with math. The guy in 2F offered to help her with groceries. Even Mrs. Devlin? She replied, "I misjudged. Thank you for caring about this place." Emily forwarded it to me. No commentary. Just the message. And under it, she typed, "Some ghosts apologize. Eventually. Let me ask you something. What do you do when the world finally lets you out of the cage it once shoved you in? You run? You hide? You act like you were never there? Or do you do what Emily did? You plant a garden in the space where people buried your name. We sat on the front steps that night, watching the sun go down behind the crooked alley fence. She didn't say much, just drank her tea. Same mug, same seat. Then finally, "I think I like who I am now." I didn't say anything. She looked over at me, eyes soft, voice steady. "You helped me become her." Still, I didn't speak, because I knew if I did, something might slip. And then she asked it. The question I'd waited months for. "Do you think we could ever be anything again?" Let that hit. Let it settle. I turned to her, saw all of her. Not just the woman I loved. Not just the one who broke me, but the one who rebuilt herself. And I said, "Let's not name it yet. Let's just live it." She smiled. And it was the kind of smile you only wear when you've earned it. Not when you've been forgiven, but when you've forgiven yourself. And just like that, the question wasn't unasked anymore. It had been answered. And what came next wasn't about rebuilding the past. It was about rewriting the future, together or apart. But never again in the dark. You ever feel like things are finally balanced, and then life slips a blade under your ribs just to see if you're still paying attention? That was the letter. Again, this time addressed to me formally. Typed, stamped, certified. But it didn't come from a tenant. Came from the city. I opened it at the end of an otherwise perfect Tuesday. Tenants were paid up. Emily had just started tutoring Mrs. Devlin's granddaughter. Irony, right? And for the first time in over a year, there was no mold, no mice, no noise complaints, no ghost from the past knocking on the door. Then I slit the envelope open, and the room got cold. Notice of intent to acquire property. That was the title. City emblem stamped in the top corner. 3 pages of bureaucratic language. But the bottom line? Simple. The city was invoking eminent domain. The block, our block, was being rezoned for commercial development, and my building was on the chopping block. Let me ask you something. What do you do when the world you finally made peace in gets marked for demolition? Not figurative, literal, because that's what this was. Not a complaint, not a setback, a wrecking ball with a date. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the office, rereading the letter, checking the parcel number again and again, as if it might change if I stared hard enough. Didn't. Parcel hashtag 1276B. Our building. The one I'd inherited after my father passed. The one I'd sunk money into, sweat into, my marriage into. And now, they wanted it gone. For what? A parking garage? A coffee chain? A goddamn strip mall? Emily knocked on the door the next morning. I didn't answer. She let herself in. She'd earned that right by now. Saw the letter on the desk. Read the words. Then sat. Didn't speak. Didn't gasp. Just whispered. They're taking it? I nodded. She stared at the floor. Then said, where will everyone go? I didn't have an answer. Because I didn't even know where I would go. See, this place wasn't just real estate. It was a timeline. Every crack in the tile had a memory. Every lease renewal was a story. Every hallway had heard secrets, arguments, apologies, and laughter. And now, the city wanted to flatten it all for progress. But progress for who? Emily stood, walked to the window, watched the school bus pass by outside. Then she said, we should fight it. I turned. Emily. She spun. Firm.
No.
I'm serious. This building, it means something. You think these people have anywhere else to go? Rents tripled in the last 2 years. No one's going to take Madison and her kids. Or Mrs. Devlin. Or half of us. Her voice cracked. Just once. Then steadied. You think I became who I am now so some city planner could bulldoze it like we were never here? Let me ask you something. What happens when the person you thought you had to protect becomes the one leading the charge? Because that's what Emily was doing. Not panicking. Not grieving. Planning. She spent the next 2 days knocking on every door in the building. Gathering signatures. Stories. Testimonials. She created a petition. Wrote an open letter. Contacted a local reporter she used to go to school with. And me? I watched. Like I was seeing someone rewire herself from the inside out. She brought it all back on Friday. Dropped the folder on my desk. Said, we're not going quietly. I opened the folder. It was beautiful. Messy but powerful. Photos of tenants. Quotes. A letter from a veteran in 3E who said, this building is the first place I've ever felt safe sleeping. Emily sat down. Exhaled. I know it's a long shot. It's not nothing, I said. She looked at me and smiled. That's the first time I've heard you say that. About anything. Let me tell you something. Sometimes strength doesn't come from winning. It comes from standing up even when you expect to lose. And Emily was finally standing tall. But what none of us knew was that someone else had already bought into the demolition. A familiar name. A name that would bring it all full circle. Because when I checked the development filing late that night, The acquisition firm listed on the purchase? Reynolds and Gray Partners, Jason's family business. The man who broke my marriage was now trying to break my building. And this time, I wasn't giving him either. You ever see a name on paper and feel like you're being haunted all over again? Reynolds and Gray Partners, Jason's family firm. Old money. Real estate predators dressed up in boutique ties and community slogans. And now, they were the ones filing to flatten my building. The place Emily rebuilt her soul in. The place I survived the worst year of my life. The place full of people who had nowhere else to go. And Jason, he was coming for it. Not just for money. Not for expansion. For control. Let me ask you something. What kind of man blows up your marriage, fails at life, disappears into the mess he made, and then comes back not to apologize, but to take the last thing you still have? That kind of man doesn't deserve silence. I didn't tell Emily at first. Didn't want to rip the wind from her sails while she was gathering signatures and rallying tenants. She was glowing in that role not because she wanted credit, but because she'd found purpose. Real, tangible, world-changing purpose. So I took it on myself to dig deeper. The firm's filings were public record, buried in dry PDFs, but there. I spent 2 hours cross-referencing property maps and transfer logs, and found it. Jason wasn't listed personally, but his father, Gerald Reynolds, was on the acquisition memo. That was their game. Keep Jason's name off the paperwork. Let Daddy's name do the dirty work. Hide behind LLCs and generational wealth. But the intent was as personal as a punch. That night, Emily found me in the office again. Same seat, same glare at the computer screen. She dropped off another stack of petitions. Tenants from the north side signed, she said, a little breathless. Even the college kids. One of them wants to make a video. I didn't respond. She noticed. What? I clicked the file, spun the laptop toward her. She read the acquisition memo, saw the name. Her mouth dropped open, then closed, and she just said, "No. No, that's not possible." But it was, because destruction runs in some families like a genetic trait. "I don't think Jason even knows I live here," she said, voice shaking. "His dad always hated me. If this is their way of erasing us." I stopped her. "Then we fight harder." She stared at me. I could see her processing it. The old her would have unraveled, felt trapped, panicked, left. But this version stood straighter. And then she said, "We make it public." The next morning the email went out. To the tenants, to the reporter she knew, to the city development board. Subject line: "Why are Reynolds and Gray destroying affordable housing to build a parking lot?" It had teeth, names, photos, tenant quotes, screenshots of the corporate filings. Emily didn't hold back, and neither did I. We signed it together. Her name first, then mine. Let me tell you something. There's a particular kind of power in standing beside someone you once thought you'd never forgive, to fight the same enemy that once united and destroyed you both. The response? Immediate. The email went viral in a local way. Neighborhood groups picked it up. A small activist newsletter called us. Then the reporter Emily knew? She showed up in person, interviewed tenants, toured the building, took photos of the hallways, the stairwells, the tutoring sessions. And suddenly, we weren't invisible anymore. But visibility comes with a cost. Because 2 days later, I got another knock. And this time, it wasn't Jason. It was his father, Gerald Reynolds. Suit worth more than my building's monthly revenue. Hair combed back like he was auditioning for a villain role he didn't know he already lived. He didn't ask to come in. Just stepped inside like he still thought the world belonged to people like him. "I don't appreciate the public smear," he said. I shrugged. "We don't appreciate being displaced." He looked around, nose wrinkling slightly. "Do you really think this building is worth saving? It's a relic." I smiled. "So are you. But you're still here, aren't you?" He bristled. Then slowly, "Call off your little crusade. It won't stop the zoning." I walked to the door, opened it, held it. Then why are you here? He hesitated, then muttered, because you're making noise. That was our win. Because when men like Gerald show up in person, it means you've hit something soft under all that steel. It means they're afraid. Not of you, but of attention. Emily passed him on the way in, didn't acknowledge him, didn't glare, just walked past like he was nothing. Because now, he was. That night, I looked at the building like it was a person, and I asked it a question I'd never said out loud before. Can I save you? And deep inside me, something answered, not alone. Let me ask you something. What happens when two people, once enemies, stand shoulder to shoulder to save the one thing that taught them who they really were? That's not romance. That's redemption. And if the city wants to knock this place down, they're gonna have to knock us down first. You ever watch a clock tick and feel like it's counting you down? That was the vibe in the office the morning we got the final notice. A red-stamped envelope. City seal. Deadline printed in bold at the top. Final review hearing scheduled. 30 days. That was it. 30 days to convince the city not to level the building. 30 days to protect everything we'd fought. People clapped. And Emily? She didn't speak that night. She didn't have to. Her work was the speech. But me? I wasn't just watching anymore. I was working the legal angle. Pulled zoning ordinances. Found contradictions in the city's fast-track policy. Found out the historical registry had not been properly consulted. There was a loophole, small but real. If we could prove the building had historical community significance, the demolition could be delayed or even denied. That meant proving this building was more than old brick and creaky stairs. It meant proving it mattered. We filed the paperwork within a week. Attached the tenant letters, the petitions, the media coverage. Even Mrs. Devlin gave a statement, and you better believe that carried weight. Old woman, conservative as hell, saying, "This place gave me purpose again." That hits different on city council desks. But all of it came down to one moment. The hearing. In a city chamber room with bad lighting and worse coffee. Emily, me, and half the building showed up. Even Madison, dragging 3 kids and a bag of goldfish crackers, came. Everyone showed up. Everyone except one person. Jason. But his name was there. Listed as a junior partner on the development project. That meant he'd be present on the city roll. But he hadn't shown his face. Not yet. We sat through 3 zoning issues before ours came up. Item 4C. Proposed redevelopment of Parcel 1276B. The rep from Reynolds and Gray stood up. Spoke in smooth, vague terms. Community-enhancing infrastructure. Better economic use of land. Positive impact on neighborhood value. All the usual sterilized poison. Then they opened the floor to objections. I stood up. Spoke for exactly 4 minutes and 31 seconds. I told them this wasn't just about buildings. It was about people, stability, history, truth. Then Emily stood up, and the room shifted, because she didn't speak like someone who wanted sympathy. She spoke like someone who bled in those walls, who healed here. She said, "You can build a million shiny new things in this city, but you can't fake soul. You can't replace a heartbeat with concrete. Let me ask you something. You ever hear truth so raw, the room forgets how to blink?" That was her speech.
No tears.
No drama, just realness. And when she sat down, she didn't even look at me. She looked straight ahead, like she already knew she'd said something unignorable. Then, a voice from the back of the room. "I'd like to make a statement." Everyone turned. It was Jason. Standing in the back, hands in his pockets, looking more like a ghost than a man. The council looked confused. "Name?" He replied, "Jason Reynolds, junior partner on the acquisition team." They nodded, gave him the floor, and Jason walked up to the mic, paused, looked at me, then at Emily, then at the room, and said, "I object to the demolition too." The room froze. Even I didn't breathe. He cleared his throat. "I know what this looks like. I was part of the original development proposal. I even benefited from pushing it forward. But I've seen what this building is, who it's made of, and I was wrong. He looked right at Emily. I was wrong about everything. And just like that, the man who started this story as the villain just put a crack in the machine that hired him. A real one. Because insider objections matter. Especially when they come from the same family name holding the wrecking ball. The council recessed to review. 15 minutes. Longest 15 minutes of my life. And in that time, I looked at Emily. She looked at me. And we said nothing. Because sometimes, you say everything by just sitting still. Together. But we weren't done yet. Not even close. Because when they returned, what they said was not what anyone expected. The council returned. 7 city officials in suits that didn't fit, holding expressions carved from neutrality. The lead chair, a tall woman with a clipboard and a cold voice, looked out across the room like a judge handing down a sentence. And in a way, she cleared her throat. After reviewing community testimony, legal documentation, and public filings, the board has reached a preliminary decision regarding Parcel 1276B. The room went silent. No coughs, no whispers, no movement, just breath, held like a last hope clutched too tightly. The application for expedited redevelopment is hereby denied pending further historical review. Let me ask you something. You ever feel your whole body exhale before your brain even catches up? Because that's what happened. The words landed, and for a split second the room didn't react. Then, cheers, gasps. Mrs. Devlin dropped her purse. Emily covered her mouth. And me? I just closed my eyes. Because sometimes winning doesn't feel loud. Feels quiet, like finally hearing yourself think again after years of noise. But the council wasn't finished. This is not a permanent rejection. It's a stay of demolition for 120 days pending historic designation review. That process must be initiated within 30 days by community representatives or the property owner. Emily looked at me. You're the owner, she whispered. I nodded slowly, but the chair wasn't done. She glanced at her papers, then added, also, we've received notice from the junior partner listed on the redevelopment proposal, Mr. Jason Reynolds, that he intends to withdraw his firm's interest entirely. Jason stood in the back, silent, didn't smile, didn't gloat, just turned and walked out. Let me ask you something. What happens when the person you hated most walks away from the one thing they could still use to hurt you? Is that redemption, regret, or just fatigue? Maybe all three, maybe none. But it didn't matter anymore, because the fight was ours now, and we just bought time. Outside the chamber, Emily hugged Madison. Mrs. Devlin actually cried. One of the college kids was filming a TikTok, narrating the whole thing like it was a revolution. And in a small way, it was. Emily pulled me aside. Are you going to file the historical designation? I nodded. It's a long process. Complicated. She looked up at the building behind us, across the street. The red brick, the crooked gutter, the cracked steps she once slipped on. Then she said, complicated doesn't scare me anymore. We walked back to the apartment in silence. Not awkward, not tense, just full. Like every step was its own ending. And maybe a beginning too. That night, she came by the office again. Same tea, same mug. But this time, she brought something else. An envelope. She handed it to me without a word. Inside, a letter, written in her handwriting. It said, Dear Mark, if I ever leave again, not out of guilt or shame or fear, but for something real, I want you to know this time it's not because I don't love you. It's because you taught me how to stand. And standing sometimes means walking forward, not just staying still. You saved this building. But more than that, you saved me. By letting me break. By letting me come back. By not deciding who I had to be before I figured it out myself. Whatever happens next, I hope I get to walk through it beside you. But even if I don't, I'll carry this place with me. Always. Emily, let me tell you something. Some letters aren't meant to be replied to. They're meant to be held. So that's what I did. I didn't say anything. She didn't ask me to. She just sat beside me. Two people who had lost each other, and maybe, just maybe, were finding something better in the ruins. Not romance. Not yet. Maybe never. But respect. Real respect. And something like peace. Let me ask you one final question. What happens when the wrecking ball misses? When the building still stands? And so do the people inside it. That's not survival. That's legacy. Because sometimes the most powerful response to being broken is not revenge. It's remaining. And we remained. Together. You want to know what I did when my wife left me? When she walked out of our marriage and into the arms of the man who used to sit across from me at barbecues. The man I called my best friend? The one who I once said would be my best man, if I ever renewed my vows? You want to know what I actually did? I didn't yell. I didn't hit. I didn't burn their clothes or post about it online. I said, congrats. Yeah. You heard me. Congrats. Because if you want to hand your life over to someone who treats loyalty like it's optional, you don't deserve a fight. You deserve the silence that follows a door closing with finality. But what they didn't expect was the calm. Because calm makes people nervous. It makes them wonder, did he know something we don't? What is he planning? And in this case, they were right to wonder. Because 3 weeks after she moved out, and 3 days after they signed a lease at that cozy apartment on 4th and Mercer, guess who the property belonged to? Me. Let me rewind for the latecomers. That building was my father's. He bought it in the 80s, back when you could trade charm for square footage. When he died, he left it to me, and I held on to it, even when the water pipes screamed and the city threatened code violations. I poured money into it, patched it up, learned names, habits, repair tricks. It became more than property. It became mine. And then, they moved in. Emily and Jason, Unit 1B, thinking they were starting a new chapter, not realizing they were walking into a book I wrote. I didn't evict them. I didn't raise their rent. I didn't even confront them. I just let it be. Let the story play out. Let time do what anger never could. Because I knew something. Something they didn't. Eventually, comfort reveals character. And Jason, he was never built for maintenance. Of apartments. Of people. Of anything. Soon it started. Late rent. Excuses. Emily shouldering the load while he flirted with bartenders and made half-hearted promises to get his act together. And me? I watched. Not because I was bitter. Because I was curious. And you know what I saw? Emily cracking. Not from guilt. From disillusionment. Because the man she risked everything for was a hollow victory. And that broke her more than I ever could have. But here's where it changes. Here's where it matters. She didn't just crumble. She rebuilt. Not for me. For herself. She got a job. Paid rent on time. Helped neighbors. Took ownership. And eventually, she became the backbone of that building. The same one she entered as a fugitive from her own choices. And when Jason left her, she didn't chase him. She locked her door. Stayed. And stood up. Let me ask you something. What's more satisfying than revenge? Redemption. Not just hers. Mine too. Because in letting go of the need to punish, I found something way more powerful. Control. Not over her. Not over him. Over myself. I didn't become the guy who slashed tires. I became the guy who signed leases. Who protected a building full of people. Who sat in city council meetings and fought billionaires with nothing but a folder and a worn-out clipboard. Who looked at the woman who betrayed him and said, "You can stay." And guess what? She did. But not as my wife. Not as the girl who ran. As the woman who returned. So what did I do when my wife left me for my best friend? I became the kind of man they didn't expect me to survive long enough to become. I turned heartbreak into housing. Bitterness into boundaries, silence into strategy. And when the city tried to take it all, I didn't just save the building. I saved what mattered. The stories, the people, the community, my self-respect. I know some of you were waiting for fire, for revenge, for chaos. But here's the twist. The calm was the revenge, because they thought they burned the house down. But all they did was light the furnace. And now, this whole block runs on the heat they left behind. You ever see someone rebuild? It's ugly, messy, slow. But damn, it's beautiful when it's done. And me? I'm not done. Not yet. But I'm standing. And sometimes, that's more than enough. So to anyone out there who's been betrayed, who's been left, who's been torn apart by people who swore they'd stay, let them go. Let them move into the building you own. And when rent comes due, just smile and say, congrats.